Chapter 1565. The Crown Princess had comprehended 4 supreme laws of the universe. She wanted to join the battle and help Amo, but she knew very well that even though she had comprehended 4 supreme laws of the universe, she could not fight a top-numbered soul demon. If she joined the battle, she would only be a burden to Amo, who would have to protect her. Besides, there were so many titled soul demons present, including a soul demon dragon. With her demigod strength, there was no way she could defy the heavens. Amo had already given up all hope. The Crown Princess sighed as well. None of them thought there would be any miracle. Would the Xiai divine dynasty's army come to their rescue? Perhaps, but the latter could not have sensed them so soon and discovered them as soon as they arrived at the Xiai divine dynasty's territory. So, by the time they arrived, Amo and the Crown Princess would have been torn to pieces by the soul demons. However, a pitch-black ship appeared out of thin air. It was a surprise to Amo and the Crown Princess. Amo was fine. The Crown Princess's jaw dropped as she looked at the figure walking out of the black warship. Even through the veil, Amo could sense Crown Princess's shock. Could it be an acquaintance of the Crown Princess? Could they be saved? Amo clutched her chest and coughed up blood. She suddenly felt a surge of excitement. Had the reinforcements arrived? The surrounding numbered soul demons also fixed their eyes on the black warship. The huge soul demon dragon, with half of its body still deep in the Dragon Valley, roared at the netherworld ship. The dragon's roar rang out incessantly. On the netherworld ship, Little Who jumped up and down and landed on the deck. His fur stood on end, and he bared his teeth and roared at the soul demon dragon. Of course, to the soul demon dragon, this Little Who was just the size of a fart. Naturally, he was ignored. Bufong walked lazily out of the ship. He saw the seriously injured Amo and the Crown Princess, and his eyes rested on the Crown Princess for a few seconds. The latter was wearing a veil, so Bufong did not recognize her, although he seemed to feel a sense of déjà vu from her. However, it was just déjà vu. Bufong turned his eyes from the Crown Princess to the soul demon dragon. A 5-clawed divine dragon possessed by a soul demon? Bufong's eyes flashed. Had the Dragon Valley been invaded by soul demons as well? These soul demons really came in a menacing manner. I wonder if the flesh of the divine dragon will undergo any strange changes after the soul demons occupy it. Bufong rubbed his chin, thinking about the feasibility of cooking. In the distance, Amo saw Bufong. He sensed Bufong's aura. Amo's face instantly turned ghastly pale, and the wisp of hope that had arisen in her heart shattered with a bang. Demigod? This fellow who walked out of the black warship was only a demigod. Were the people on this boat just lost sheep, and not the miracle that saved them? Amo was so desperate that she found it hard to breathe. She couldn't see through Yu's aura, but it wasn't very strong. It shouldn't be much stronger than that man. Such a combination did not give them any hope. Amo raised her hand and took Lady's soft hand, and then she closed her eyes. His face was covered in blood, and his body was in tatters. She had resigned herself to her fate. It's him. The Crown Princess put away her surprise, and a complicated look appeared in her eyes as she stammered out the words. Her voice made Amo, who had closed her eyes, open them. Amo, we're saved. She breathed a sigh of relief. That gave Amo pause. Save my ass. She turned to look at Lady. Is she scared out of her wits? Can a demigod really save us? However, when she saw the complicated look in Lady's eyes, as well as the determination in them, Amo was a little confused. Why does Lady trust that warship so much? She has never trusted me so much. Bufong yawned. Those numbered soul demons naturally noticed Bufong as well. In fact, Bufong was a celebrity among the soul demons. Alone, he had gone deep into the soul demon's lair, destroyed the divine Titan temple, snatched the Titan's heart, survived Soul 13's attack, escaped unscathed, and took away a delicious crown prince. So, as soon as Bufong appeared, the eyes of the surrounding numbered soul demons lit up. Their scarlet eyes burst into thousands of dazzling lights. It's that chef, I can't believe the chef that Soul 13 has been longing for is here to die. I didn't expect there to be such a pleasant surprise. If we capture this chef, Soul 13 will definitely value us more. The surrounding numbered soul demons were in an uproar. Of course, the huge soul demon dragon did not feel anything. After all, the soul demon divine dragon did not recognize him. Soul 15, Soul 17, you two deal with that chef. Leave the crown princess here to me, Soul 16. Make it quick. Don't attract the attention of the people of the Xiai divine dynasty. Soul 16 said coldly. They were the early numbered soul demons, and their strength was extremely formidable. The two numbered soul demons around them sneered. Then their black insect scales flashed, and they spun and sped toward the netherworld ship where Bufong and you were. Their speed was as fast as lightning, and their strength was comparable to that of a top-grade god king. Mo's face turned pale. Sure enough, these soul demons will not spare the people on this warship. All of them must die. Buzz, Soul 16's face became very ferocious. His body turned into a mad demon, and a black aura gushed out of him, blotting out the starry sky as he rushed toward Mo and the crown princess. A terrible murderous aura swept across heaven and earth. Mo closed her eyes in despair and clenched the crown princess's hand. Soul 16 enjoyed the despair of humans very much. Humans were the food of the soul demons, so they should show such emotions in the face of soul demons. This was the fate of humans. His sharp claws swept out, shattering the void inch by inch. Mo could already feel the sharpness approaching her. I'm going to die. The crown princess's eyes widened. Her eyes were very beautiful and big, like pure gems, so pure that no one could bear to profane them. She stared at the descending claws with a look of anticipation in her eyes. She never thought that she would meet that man here. Now that he was here, a miracle must be on their side. Hope? What are you hoping for? Stupid human. Soul 16 roared. His scarlet eyes tore through the starry sky like two beams of light. Then, the claws fell hard. Boom! Boom! The terrifying aura caused some of the star fragments in the surroundings to explode and shatter. Suddenly, in front of Soul 16, the void was torn open. The power of the law of space surged. A skinny figure had walked out of the crack at some point in time. Soul 16's pupils constricted. It was that chef. In the distance, in the direction of the netherworld ship, Soul 15 and Soul 17 were approaching. Yu's eyes burst with green light, and a ghostly green light wrapped around her. After fusing with the power of the ancient female corpse, Yu's strength is now very fearsome. The cursed snake rushed up, coiled around her body, and slithered over her body. The next moment, the ghostly green light burst into a dazzling light. The cursed snake rushed to the top, opened its mouth, and revealed its ferocious fangs. Hiss! 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 It roared at Soul 15 and Soul 17. In the blink of an eye, the cursed snake rushed out and fought with the two numbered soul demons. It was a terrifying scene. I can't believe you can fight them alone. Both Soul 15 and Soul 17 felt a chill. A cursed goddess. Their scarlet eyes narrowed. They naturally knew the identity of the cursed goddess. The power of curses was a very terrible force to soul demons. It would corrode their bodies and power. Therefore, they did not dare to touch it. For a moment, you had actually entangled the two numbered soul demons. However, Mo did not have time to pay attention to the scene here, because at this moment, her gaze fell on the space in front of her. Bufong was wearing a striped red and white vermilion robe. He was hovering quietly in the starry sky. He was standing in front of them. His frail body was standing in front of them. For some reason, Mo felt a little relieved. She felt a little relieved from a demigod. This feeling was *King weird. She was a supreme god king, the protector of the immortal spirit divine dynasty. Soul 16 was approaching. It's good that this chef is here. Let's die together. Soul 13 had said that the chef had used up all his trump cards and means. This time, the chef was going to die. The black smoke turned into a ferocious beast, roaring as it rushed toward Buffon. Run! IMO could not help but tremble when she sensed the power. The crown princess's heart tightened, and there was a look of worry in her pure eyes. Things were no longer what they used to be. Could that man still create miracles as usual? With a strange expression, Buffon turned his head and glanced at IMO, who was shouting at him to run. He raised his hand. The vermilion robe fluttered. Buffon picked up the ladle at his waist. It was time for the Chilean transmigration ladle, the complete god of cooking set, to show its true power. Soul 16 roared. He was confident that this chef could not stop him. If he killed this chef, he would become a meritorious servant. Once Soul 13 became a soul overlord, he would become the target of Soul 13's attention, and Soul 13 might even help him become the second soul overlord. In his eyes, everything seemed to become very beautiful. He was getting closer, very close. The chef was putting up a desperate struggle. The chef took out a ladle. He was getting closer. He was waving the ladle. He's courting death. Soul 16's heart fluctuated violently. Oh! Suddenly, Soul 16's pupils constricted. Looking at the pitch-black ladle, his heart skipped a beat. It was as if there was a terrifying existence lying dormant in that ladle. It made him feel inexplicably uneasy. However, when he thought of Soul 13's words, Soul 16 became confident again. Then, he threw out a claw and collided with the ladle. The next moment, a dazzling light burst forth. Soul 16 could feel the horror of the ladle. The ladle smashed down. The black smoke on his body exploded, and the insect scales on his body kept breaking. He collapsed at the first touch. This was completely different from the script he had thought of. It was as if that ladle contained a great terror. The ladle seemed to contain great terror. Bam! The Soul 16's claw broke. The ladle continued to smash down. Soul 16's mind went blank as he heard the deafening sound of a bell ring. Dong! His head buzzed. Everything in front of him was spinning. Bam! Soul 16 flew backward. When IMO saw Buffon take out a ladle to deal with the soul demon, she felt that this man was really stupid, hopelessly stupid. A mere demigod actually used a ladle to fight against a numbered soul demon? Could that ladle break the sky with a single scoop? In fact, the man didn't even respond to her warning. She had kindly reminded him, but this man was indifferent. Wait a minute, this man will definitely despair. IMO coughed up blood. She became more and more desperate. She did not expect that the man she had been waiting for was actually a retard. However, the crown princess's eyes lit up. She looked like the moon in the night, extremely bright. She was pleasantly surprised and shocked. What happened? Subconsciously, IMO looked over her shoulder. Perhaps it was the man who had smashed the numbered soul demon's head with a ladle. The scene of the numbered soul demon's head swollen and sending him flying backward. I can't believe he didn't die with a ladle. A faint voice of surprise rang through the void. It lingered in IMO's ears. This caused IMO's face, which was already filled with shock, to freeze completely. Chapter 1566. It was as if he had farted. In a flash, it reached its peak. Nethery and the two soul demons were locked in a fierce battle. Rumble. But when it came to life and death, the soul demons scattered quickly. Wasn't it said that the crown prince who comprehended two supreme laws was already a top-notch genius? This was the first time he had met someone who comprehended four supreme laws of the universe. After all, Buffon had killed the keeper in the Titan divine dynasty. Bam! Therefore, many soul demons were very wary of Buffon and did not dare to underestimate him. He grabbed the stinky tofu and stuffed it into his mouth. Before long, it was burned to ashes and dissipated in the void. Although that top genius was now working as a waiter in his restaurant, the ladle smashed down. The crown princess's heart skipped a beat, and a look of worry appeared in her big, watery eyes. Then, she opened her mouth and let out a deafening roar, heading straight for them. IMO and the crown princess widened their eyes. They fled frantically, trying to get out of the position where they could confront Buffon. Without hesitation, Soul 16 scattered as soon as he touched the ladle. Rumble. Many soul demons already had the same idea. Then, he smashed the ladle down at the back of the soul demon's head. Who the hell is this guy? The moment the ladle collided, Soul 16's expression changed. Bam! 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 It was powerful enough to shatter a star. Bufong was not in a hurry to strike. Until the moment he died, Soul 16 could not figure out how he was killed. It was really the misfortune of these soul demons to meet Qilin. The power of that ladle was so amazing. How could those soul demons resist such temptation? Her body moved, and the aura on her body continued to rise. If Soul 13 were here, he might have a headache. But now that he had the ladle, he was not afraid of ordinary numbered soul demons. There were many soul demons on the bone ship. They were not as strong as numbered soul demons, but they were not weak. The stinky tofu in the bowl burst into a dazzling light. The power in Amo's body surged, and she struck out with her palm, wanting to block this move. Before Bufong could activate the ladle in his hand, a strange black light flashed. Just by looking at the ruins of the Dragon Valley below, one could tell that these soul demons were really evil. Without hesitation, Bufong glanced indifferently at the soul demon, who had fled into the distance in an instant, and the corners of his mouth twitched slightly. Bufong waved his hand. Sure enough, that man, as always, was good at creating miracles. It swept out. Bufong could only think of this. After all, the fact that Bufong had killed Soul 16 with a single ladle had shocked them too much. Didn't Soul 13 say that this chef has no more trump cards? Suddenly, he should have been the one to crush this human demigod to death. Invisibly, they heard the Qilin boss burp again. This, the demigod chef, had killed a numbered soul demon with a ladle. Soul 16 felt as if he was being stared at by a supreme existence. It grabbed at the stinky tofu like a madman. However, right now, they were trembling in fear. Amo and the crown princess, who were watching the battle, shuddered. Soul 16 flew backward, crushing the void. Then, he flipped over and landed in the starry sky. Her four supreme laws of the universe seemed somewhat fragile. Bufong did not expect that this soul demon would dare to come again. Imo sucked in a breath of cold air and looked at Bufong fervently. The energy patterns on his body kept flashing and covering him. Is the ladle the soul demon's nemesis? Soul 16's eyes widened. He unleashed the law of space and took a step forward. A collision broke out in an instant. He had fought with all his might, but he could not defeat a chef with a ladle. Looking at his face, Bufong froze. They could not resist the aroma at all. How was this possible? A demigod just knocked a numbered soul demon away with a ladle? They steered the bone ship and planned to flee into the distance. When I become a soul overlord, I'll come back to find trouble with this stinking chef. Slash. In the distance, the Qilin transmigration ladle flew back into his hand. Bufong fiddled with the Qilin transmigration ladle. Killing a numbered soul demon was like taking a sip of water. In fact, Bufong was quite famous among the soul demons. After all, when Bufong broke into the Titan divine dynasty alone and broke into the soul demon kingdom, he had killed many soul demons. There were not many soul demons on the bone ship, but it was clear that Bufong did not want them to escape. It was not easy for them to grow from black balls of soul demon flesh to their current level. How many humans had they devoured to achieve their current cultivation base and strength? Bam! That was beating them to death while they were still alive. With a loud bang, the ladle exploded in midair. Bufong paused. With just one strike, he lunged at Bufong. Imo felt that her worldview had collapsed. Bufong had a strange look on his face. The true form of a soul demon? The ladle was once again thrown out in an ordinary manner. Imo was not dead. After all, she had the cultivation base of a high-grade god king, so the wounds on her body had healed. So Bufong's mind flickered. Soul 16's eyes burst into a dazzling light. A rumble rang out. Amo, the crown princess, was wearing a veil, but it could not hide her bright eyes. Imo resisted the urge to curse. However, she could not believe that she was knocked flying away by a chef with a ladle. The terrifying dragon roar seemed like it was going to roar through the starry sky, blasting apart the starry sky. Like a great demon, it flew as fast as lightning and arrived in the blink of an eye. Mo's expression flickered, and her aura kept rising. A puffing sound rang out. Soul 16's true form exploded in an instant. Soul 16 decided to try again. Soul 15 and Soul 17 were fighting madly. A numbered soul demon who made the three divine dynasties tremble with fear, had fallen here. It must be a coincidence. The memories in the depths of his mind surged. F*CKU. Now, I just want to run. He gathered all his strength and rushed toward the ladle. Soul 13 had clearly said that this chef had used up all his trump cards and was very weak. The four supreme laws of the universe immediately wheeled around her. Bufang pinched the ladle with 2 fingers and rotated it, causing the ladle to spin like a windmill. Her originally fair and translucent face also turned deathly pale in an instant. His intuition was right. This chef had the ability to kill him. There was definitely a great terror in this ladle. He was going to grow into a soul overlord in the future. In fact, even without the ladle, Bufang might have been able to kill the numbered soul demon. The high-grade God King's body exploded, and the soul demon's true form flew out and fled into the distance like a madman. Rumble. How could she explain the scene in front of her? However, what Bufang did shocked her the most. The next moment, he moved. Oh, I don't want to die. I really don't want to die. The law of life, the law of time, the law of destruction, the law of space. A dragon tail swept over like a whip lashing at the starry sky. Then its aura rose steadily. Mo was dumbfounded, and her body was trembling slightly. Bufang twitched his mouth as he watched the bone ship sail away. Try to run? But the crown princess shuddered and coughed up a mouthful of blood. The next moment, she found that the soul demon dragon had crawled out of the sealed dragon valley at some point. The soul demons did not have any mission in mind. They submitted to Soul 13 because of his strength. They acknowledged his strength, so they worked for him. Even the crown princess beside him, who had comprehended 4 supreme laws of the universe, could barely contend with an ordinary high-grade god king. As soon as the fragrance wafted out, the soul demons who were about to flee became restless. Roar! Bufang's expression grew stranger and stranger. Now that you had the upper hand, Bufang could basically guess what would happen to these soul demons. The blood-stained veil fell off the crown princess's face and floated in the air. The temptation emanating from the cursed goddess's body made them unable to restrain themselves. His eyes were a little confused, and a huge bump swelled up on his forehead. It was as if he was cooking a dish and had just begun to sprinkle seasoning on it. However, he was not afraid. The crown princess's talent was amazing, but she was clearly not good at fighting. Soul 16's body exploded. A terrible dragon aura spread in an instant. Finally, Bufang grabbed the handle of the wok. He turned his eyes and rested them on the huge soul demon dragon and the bone ship in the distance. Bufang looked in that direction. The bowl of stinky tofu shot out his hand. Then it shot into the distance. His face trembled like a sieve. It was not fancy at all. The two collided. Bufang watched carefully. He jerked his head around. Run. Then he transformed into a 4-sided wheel of law, trying to help Mo block the attack of the dragon tail. Bufang, who was watching the soul demons explode like fireworks after eating stinky tofu, frowned. He turned his head and saw the crown princess unleashing her power of law. It was too terrifying. It smashed in his Soul 16's true form. He naturally could not bear to die. The crown princess stared at Bufang with bright eyes. Bufang had knocked him flying away with the ladle, and the insect scales on his claws were all broken. This was a great blow and stimulation to him. Rumble! A dragon roar rang out. The strength of the temple keeper was much stronger than that of Soul 16. Mo's expression flickered, and she coughed up a mouthful of blood as she was knocked flying away by the dragon tail. This chef's tricks are always unexpected. A ladle, stinky tofu, these things that should not have appeared in a battle had appeared. Yes, I'm not mistaken. However, The probability of her defeating a numbered soul demon by a fluke is very small. Of course, the fact that she, a demigod, could resist the blow of a soul demon dragon, which is close to the level of a god emperor, is extraordinary enough. Perhaps, in the face of this five-clawed divine dragon, a soul demon who is close to the level of a god emperor, he glanced at Soul 16, who had vanished in a thin air. A sad and moving face appeared in front of Bufang. However, the demigod in front of him was so heaven-defying. Bufang frantically retreated behind him. In the distance, he was crushing the two soul demons and had gained a clear advantage. Then, like a pillar holding up the sky, she smashed down from below. Rumble. In the distance, he had even killed a soul demon who was a keeper of the temple. This time, 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 supreme laws of the universe. Bufang breathed a sigh of relief. In the distance, in a flash, he tore through the sky and appeared behind Soul 16, who was fleeing. He placed the ladle on his wrist and spun it around, looking quite gorgeous. Then, the dispersing black energy was devoured by the ladle like a whale. Like a shooting star, it shot out in all directions. It felt as if he had been stripped naked and exposed in front of the supreme existence. A bowl of stinky tofu appeared in his hand. A strong stench wafted through the air and spread in an instant. In an instant, the mighty energy emanating from the soul demon's true form completely disappeared. Xiao Xiaolong's sister. Let me try again. If something goes wrong, I'll run away immediately. The wind blew and fluttered the crown princess's veil, making it seem as if it was about to fly away. Soul 16 was a clever man. Although he wanted to please Soul 13, he did not want to lose his life. You fought excitedly. Ever since she fused with the power of the ancient female corpse, you had never fought to her heart's content. This time, she had a good time. IMO murmured. She wanted to make sure if all this was a fluke. She froze. Chapter 1567. The veil that fell revealed a miserable face. There was no doubt that she was beautiful, but that kind of miserable beauty added a touch of classical charm to her. Bufang was slightly taken aback by the familiar face. Xiao Xiaolong, my sister. Yes, this was the crown princess who had comprehended 4 supreme laws of the universe. The woman who had been hidden by the immortal spirit divine dynasty for a long time. The woman known as the hope of all mankind. It was none other than Bufang's old acquaintance. Xiao Yinyu. It was a name that had been around for a long time. If it were not for Bufang's good memory, he might not have remembered it. Xiao Yinyu was a very gentle woman with a weak and stubborn personality. Bufang never thought that he would meet her here. It was really magical. Roar. The soul demon dragon roared. A terrible aura rushed into the sky, and the stars seemed to be on the verge of scattering. It was extremely terrifying. Almo's face was ashen. A soul demon dragon that had completely broken free of the Dragon Valley seal was almost comparable to a god emperor. How could she and the crown princess resist such an existence? Moreover, the crown princess was seriously injured while trying to protect her. How was she going to explain this to the immortal spirit empress? The blood-stained veil fell, drifting in the starry sky with a sad look on her face. Xiao Yinyu's eyes were slightly dazed. Her wheel of law was crumbling inch by inch. Clearly, resisting the dragon's blow had exhausted all her strength. She was not Bufang, who could ascend to the heavens with just a few laws. Although she had comprehended 4 supreme laws, she did not have a freakish spirit sea like Bufang. Buzz, Xiao Yinyu's body, was almost broken like a withered flower. Bufang furrowed his brows slightly. With a thought in his mind, he sped away. The dragon's huge eyes turned scarlet. Its mouth was wide open, and it no longer had the majesty of the Dragon Emperor. All that was left was terrifying ferocity. Its sharp teeth burst forth as it opened its mouth, trying to swallow Xiao Yinyu in one gulp. A human genius who had comprehended 4 supreme laws of the universe was a rare delicacy to a soul demon. It was so delicious. He could not miss it. Rumble. However, a thin figure appeared in front of him. With a loud rumble, the soul demon divine dragon's body came to a halt. He felt a tremendous force stopping him from moving forward. Bufong raised his Taotai arm and pressed it against the dragon's nose. In front of the divine dragon, Bufong was as small as a speck of dust. However, it was this tiny speck of dust that stopped the soul demon dragon from moving forward. Asterisk roar. Asterisk the divine dragon roared. That severely injured human genius was about to fall into his mouth. How could he miss it just like that? Scram! With a roar, the dragon tried to blow away Bufong, who was standing in his way. The vermilion robe fluttered as Bufong slapped the divine dragon's nose with one hand, making it difficult for the divine dragon to move. IMO steadied his body, stepped on air, and hovered over Xiao Yinyu's heavily injured body. "Your Highness, why are you doing this?" Amo's expression was extremely complicated as she sighed. She had asked the hope of all mankind to block the attack for her. She was really sinful. However, what shocked him even more was the chef. He raised his head and looked into the distance. With one hand, Bufong pressed against the soul demon divine dragon's nose, making it unable to move forward or retreat. Having lost its delicious food, the dragon immediately vented its anger on Bufong. A roar rang out. Black dragon breath poured out of its mouth, trying to burn Bufong to ashes in an instant. That was a dragon monarch. The Dragon Valley had long declined, was no longer as good as the immortal spirit divine dynasty's Phoenix Nest, and the Dragon Emperor was not as good as the Lord of Phoenix. However, he was, after all, a half-emperor level existence. How could this demigod resist it with his bare hands? How'd he do it? Of course, at this moment, Mo had mixed feelings. She only felt grateful that Bufong was able to stop the dragon and save her and the crown princess. Evil creature, Bufong frowned. He scolded the mad soul demon divine dragon. In his Taotai arm, the Taotai roared, and the energy of yin and yang swirled. Then, Bufong raised his hand and smashed the dragon's head with a punch. A tremendous force exploded out. The dragon's head was smashed into the starry sky. The dragon's breath deviated and streaked across the starry sky, leaving behind a scorching hot trail. The soul demon dragon's body was like a serpent with dragon claws, so he managed to stabilize himself and soared into the sky again. The next moment, the dragon's breath spewed toward Bufong. Even the void was distorted. Facing the dragon's breath, Bufong did not dodge. He had never been afraid of anyone when it came to playing with fire. With a thought in his mind, a small silver flame suddenly rose in Bufong's palm. The silver flame danced and burned quietly. It seemed to form a strange fluctuation that spread in front of Bufong. The moment the dragon's breath approached Bufong, it parted to the sides. The dragon's breath could not touch Bufong at all. It was a shocking scene. IMO was dumbfounded. I can't believe this demigod is so talented. Phew! It turns out that there are such unconventional geniuses in this world. Fortunately, the crown princess is extremely talented and has comprehended 4 of the strongest laws of the universe. No one should be able to surpass her. Amo took a deep breath. In the distance, Bufong did not stay for long. The dragon's breath was useless against Bufong, so the soul demon divine dragon swooped at him. Bufong took a step forward and soared into the sky. He was standing on the dragon's back. A gust of wind blew as the dragon kept twisting and turning in the sky, performing all kinds of difficult postures to shake off Bufong. Bufong frowned. Then, he raised a hand and grabbed the ladle at his waist. He raised the ladle and smashed it down toward the dragon's head. A ladle. It's another ladle. Amo took a deep breath. The ladle was useful against soul demons, but would it work on dragons as well? The ladle was black and seemed to absorb all the light. As soon as the light approached the ladle, it was absorbed and collapsed. Bam! Bufong grabbed the ladle and gently knocked it on the dragon's head. The knock seemed light, but it was as if it carried a tremendous force. The soul demon divine dragon howled. With a bang, the huge body suddenly fell straight down. A loud rumble rang out, and thick smoke billowed out as it smashed into the Dragon Valley. It was as if the whole Dragon Valley was about to be smashed in half. It was a horrible scene. In the distance, used cursed snakes had wrapped around two soul demons. Slowly, it corroded the bodies of the two soul demons. Before long, the bodies of the two soul demons were completely corroded. The black soul demons' true forms roared and soared into the sky, trying to flee. They knew that they had completely failed their mission. However, just as they were about to flee, a tremendous suction force came from the direction of the Dragon Valley. It made the two soul demons grieve as if they had lost their parents. They wanted to flee, but no matter how hard they struggled, they could not break free from the suction. Gradually, they were sucked away. Bufong had knocked the dragon unconscious with a ladle, but he did not expect that the ladle would emit a suction force. It sucked the true forms of the two soul demons you had killed over. Qilin seems to be very interested in these soul demons. Compared to Stinky Tofu, Qilin is the nemesis of soul demons. Bufong glanced at the soul demon divine dragon, who was knocked out by his feet. Without the ladle, Bufong did not know how many tricks he would have to use. After all, this was an emperor-level soul demon. Sure enough, with a ladle in hand, the world is mine. Bufong's eyes lit up. Then, with a shake of his hand, the dragon bone kitchen knife appeared in it. While the divine dragon was still unconscious, Bufong took the opportunity to strike it. Bufong was ready to strike. A golden light flashed. The dragon bone kitchen knife slashed across the air. Then, Bufong reached out his hand, grabbed the dragon's back, and pulled it up. Splurt! Dragon blood spattered, and a golden dragon tendon was pulled out by Bufong from the dragon's back. The unconscious dragon woke up with a start, and the soul demon who had possessed it trembled. The divine flame in Bufong's hand flickered. Under Bufong's control, the silver flame turned into a leaping flame and formed a gourmet array, which Bufong pressed onto the dragon's wound. Gourmet array. Imprisonment. The dragon kept roaring and struggling. With its tendon pulled out, the emperor-level dragon could not even use 10% of its strength. It wanted to blow up its fleshly body, but the imprisonment array had sealed its true form. The soul demon was fuming with rage. What is this human trying to do? He was very happy when he transformed into the Dragon Emperor, and he was even happier when he broke free from the Dragon Emperor's seal before his death. But now, he could not be happy at all. He wanted to cry, and he wanted to run. He wanted to return to his mother's arms. You little Mo, the crown princess, and the others all looked over in confusion. They seemed curious about what Bufong was trying to do. Why would Bufong not kill the soul demon? It was useless to keep such an existence alive. Mo hated the soul demon to the bone, and she gnashed her teeth. She felt inexplicably excited when she saw Bufong pull out the dragon's tendon and seal it. Behave yourself. Smack. Once everything was ready, Bufong slapped the dragon's head with his palm. The dragon was filled with grief and indignation. What is this human trying to do? In the ruins of the Dragon Valley, Bufong jumped down and landed on the ground. With his hands clasped behind his back, he looked indifferently at the huge dragon. The aura of the soul demon had seeped into the dragon meat. Bufong wondered what kind of ingredient it would become. I'll put it in the heaven and earth farmland for now. I'll take the meat when I need it, Bufong thought to himself. Then he waved his hand. With that, the huge dragon was put into the farmland by Bufong. The farmland was extremely vast now. Nyohan-san lay comfortably in front of the wooden hut, feeling the warm breeze in the air. He felt inexplicably comfortable. Suddenly, the sky trembled. A huge figure came crashing down from the sky. With a loud rumble, the ground trembled unceasingly. In front of the wooden hut, a group of apprentice chefs who were discussing cooking skills were a little confused. Brother Nyo, Owner Bu must have brought back ingredients again. Xiao Xiaolong shouted at Nyohan-san excitedly as he looked at the behemoth that had fallen to the ground. The group of people immediately rushed toward the spot where the soul demon dragon had fallen. However, before they could get close, they felt a tremendous pressure, which almost suffocated them. It was the aura of an emperor-level existence. Although Xiao, Xiaolong, and the others had cultivated well in the heaven and earth farmland, they hadn't even touched the demigod realm, let alone the emperor realm. Niu Hansen knew best that the ingredients Bufang had thrown in this time were freaking terrifying. The dragon was not dead. It was panting with its mouth open. Niu Hansen was shocked. What did Honorbu do to this dragon? Bufang put away the soul demon dragon and was very satisfied. An emperor-level ingredient. He dare not even think about it. IMO floated over with the injured Xiao Yinyu. "Thank you for your help, Your Excellency," IMO said. She held the crown princess tightly, wary of what Bufang would do to her. Bufang glanced at IMO and twitched his mouth. Glancing at Xiao Yinyu, who was breathing weakly, he shook his hand, and an oyster pancake floated out. It was an improved version. Not only could it heal, but it could also nourish the divine sense. "Feed it to her," Bufang said. IMO took the oyster pancake and narrowed her eyes. The crown princess is the proud daughter of heaven, a genius who has comprehended 4 supreme laws of the universe, and the hope of all mankind. Haven't she eat something you give her? IMO held the oyster pancake and stared suspiciously at Bufang. Even though Bufang had saved them, she did not dare to let the crown princess eat something he gave her. Who knew if Bufang harbored evil intentions and coveted the crown princess's beauty? Bufang rolled his eyes. He really did not want to talk to this idiot. Comprehended 4 supreme laws of the universe. What a coincidence. Me too. But I'm not the hope of all mankind. I'm just a chef. Besides, there are 2 crown princes working in my restaurant. The so-called proud daughter of heaven is nothing to me. And one last thing, Xiao Yin, you grew up eating my dishes. Are you still afraid that this oyster pancake is poisonous? Bufang looked at IMO and said unhurriedly, as if he was stating a fact. IMO's face froze. Rumble. In the distance, one warship after another of the Xiai Divine Dynasty's warships was approaching at high speed. Gold Armor and his gold armor guards had finally arrived. Unfortunately, the battle here was over. IMO hesitated. The people of the Xiai Divine Dynasty are here. Shall I believe this, chef? Suddenly, Bufang frowned. He turned his head and looked into the distance. Rumble. There, the floating white-boned ship suddenly exploded. A silver light burst out from the white-boned ship that had been blown apart. A terrible aura pervaded the air, making everyone tremble. Bufang looked at the spot where the silver light was shining. His eyes narrowed. Soul 13. Chapter 1568. After the Soul Demon Divine Dragon was subdued by Bufang, the reinforcements of the Xiai Divine Dynasty finally arrived. The reinforcements of the Xiai Divine Dynasty had finally arrived. Gold Armor flew over with his army, crossing the sky at an extremely fast speed. One warship after another hovered in midair. His face grew slightly serious as he sensed the aftermath of the battle. The blazing aura that filled the air showed that a terrible battle had broken out here just now. In the distance, Gold Armor's pupils constricted when he saw IMO and Xiao Yinyu's miserable appearance. There was no doubt that IMO and Xiao Yinyu were from the immortal spirit Divine Dynasty. The Divine Emperor had sent him here to support the Crown Princess, and he didn't want any accidents to happen to them. However, when his eyes fell on Bufang, his expression became strange and suspicious. Honorbu, why is he here? Gold Armor was a little confused. When he was in the Divine Dynasty's capital, he even nodded to Bufang. However, Bufang had arrived here even earlier than him, and seemed to have gone through a great battle. However, this was not the time to pay attention to Bufang. Gold Armor flew to IMO's side. He opened his mouth and wanted to say something. IMO grabbed the oyster pancake and was still in a daze, thinking about what Bufang had just said. However, just then, the bone warship in the distance exploded and a silver light emerged. Then, the void was torn apart, and a silver figure slowly emerged from it. A terrible aura filled the air, carrying the aura of a soul demon that blotted out the sky. Everyone was sensing this aura. The many golden armor guards behind Gold Armor began to tremble. It was too terrible. They trembled in fear from this aura. Soul 13. Gold Armor's pupils constricted as he sucked in a cold breath. Bufong's eyes narrowed as he stared coldly at Soul 13. It was not Soul 13's true form, but a clone that was attached to the bone worship. Soul 13 still looked like the Titan Divine Emperor, but he looked much more ferocious. His cold eyes were fixed on Bufong. "Damn stinky chef. It's you again," Soul 13 said. It was Bufong again. That stinky chef had ruined his plans again and again. He did not expect that this chef would spoil the delicacy he was sure to get this time, a human who had comprehended 4 supreme laws of the universe. Even the Soul Demon Dragon in the Dragon Valley was subdued by Bufong. The Soul Demon Dragon was about to break through to the Emperor realm, which was a great help to Soul Demons, but it was subdued by Bufong just like that. For the Soul Demons, this was a great loss. He really wanted to kill this chef. Boom, boom, boom. A terrible energy burst out from Soul 13's position. Instantly, it turned into a claw. This claw crossed the starry sky, directly grabbing at Bufong. The void seemed to have contracted at this moment. The Golden Armor's expression changed. Naturally, he could not just stand by and watch Soul 13 act violently. With a roar, he stood in front of Bufong. He held a golden sword in his hand. When he swung it, thousands of sword lights floated around his body. Pung, pung, pung. They shot out like cannonballs toward the claw. The collision between the sword and the claw produced a deafening rumble. Gold Armor's figure shifted a distance in the void, his aura fluctuating. He was a little shocked. This Soul 13 is too strong. He thought to himself. It was just a strike from a clone a million miles away, but he felt he could not resist it. How terrifying would he be if I face Soul 13 in person? A God Emperor? No, he might not be just a God Emperor. Gold Armor was a little frightened. If he's not a God Emperor, then could he be a Heaven God? Impossible. There are only 5 Heaven Gods in the whole chaotic universe. How could Soul 13 become the 6th? Unless a Heaven God died, he would never become a Heaven God without a Heaven God's position. Bufong's face was indifferent. With his hands clasped behind his back, he frowned at Soul 13's shadow in the distance. Soul 13 did not seem to have spent too much time here. After the strike, his body began to disintegrate. Damn chef. Just you wait. Soon I, Soul 13, will skin you and devour you. I won't let you off. Soul 13's shadow dissipated, but his terrible warning still resounded in the void. The backs of the Golden Armor and the Golden Armor guards behind him were drenched. It was too terrifying. They could not believe that Soul 13 was so terrifying. If it weren't for something holding him back, perhaps he would have completely descended just now. At that time, what awaited them might be death. Soul 13's figure disappeared, but the haze it produced made everyone panic. Soul 13, Bufong murmured. He also felt a little heavy. He found that Soul 13 was really getting stronger. Perhaps the latter could really break through to the Heaven God realm. If that was the case, it would be a disaster for the whole chaotic universe. Gold Armor flew to Mo and Xiao Yinyu's side. Mo had already fed the oyster pancake to Xiao Yinyu. Xiao Yinyu's red lips moved slightly as she tasted the familiar taste. Then a warm stream poured in her body. Her long eyelashes fluttered, and energy seemed to spin around her body. Then she woke up. It really worked. Mo was extremely shocked. That chef's dishes really had such a powerful healing effect. His Majesty the Divine Emperor invites you in, Gold Armor said thoughtfully as he looked at Mo and Xiao Yinyu. Mo nodded. Since they had come to the Xiai Divine Dynasty from the Immortal Spirit Divine Dynasty, they naturally had to report their arrival to the Divine Emperor. As for Bufong, although Mo wanted to know more about that mysterious chef, he felt that there was always a layer of fog around him. And did he say that he had also comprehended 4 supreme laws of the universe? Was this chef's talent even more terrifying than the Crown Princess's? Gold Armor and the Golden Armor guards escorted Mo and the Crown Princess away. Before leaving, Xiao Yinyu fixed her eyes on Bufong. Bufang breathed a sigh of relief. Glancing at the ruins of the Dragon Valley, he felt the seriousness of the situation. Originally, Bufang thought that the experts of this chaotic universe should be able to stop the soul demons. But now, it seemed that they might not be able to stop the soul demons. He returned to Yu's netherworld ship. It tore through the void and plunged into it. Before long, it was back in the Shai Divine Dynasty's capital and landed on the roof of the Luo family skyscraper. A long line had been waiting in front of the restaurant for a long time. The diners were all excited to see Bufang return. Bufang took down the sign in front of the restaurant, rolled up his sleeves, and stepped into the kitchen. Then, he began his daily cooking. With the Divine Emperor's order, experts from various aristocratic families could not wait to buy stinky tofu from Bufang. When they heard that stinky tofu could be used to deal with soul demons, these experts went crazy to buy stinky tofu. Gold Armor returned to the capital with Mo and Xiao Yinyu. They flew across the sky and were somewhat stunned when they saw the bustling restaurant. Why is this chef so fast? Gold Armor was puzzled, but he was also glad. If it weren't for Bufang's speed, Mo and the Crown Princess would have been dead and captured by the soul demons. If he was captured by a soul demon, he would be a sinner. Not only did he fail to complete the Divine Emperor's task, but he also let a genius who had comprehended 4 supreme laws of the universe fall into the hands of the soul demons. So, for some reason, he looked at the restaurant with gratitude in his eyes. On the warship, Xiao Yinyu's big eyes turned to look at the restaurant on the top of the skyscraper. Is that Bufang's restaurant here? Sure enough, gold will shine wherever it goes. Even in the Divine Dynasty's capital, it's the same as in the Light Wind Empire's capital. Even the restaurant's business is so hot, Xiao Yinyu thought to herself. She could not wait to go to Bufang's restaurant. Without Bufang's restaurant, she always felt that something was missing. The Divine Emperor had met Mo and Xiao Yinyu. The news of the Empress's death had finally come out. This made both Xiao Yinyu and Mo sad for a long time. The Divine Emperor was also under great pressure. The Empress's strength was no weaker than his, but she was still killed by Soul 13. This was unimaginable to him. After chatting with Mo and Xiao Yinyu for a while, then he asked someone to arrange a place for them to stay. Meanwhile, the Shai Divine Dynasty began to have a heated discussion about the Soul Demon's protection mission. The temporary task was completed. Unfortunately, it was not very attractive to Bufang, and the reward was only a drop of the God of Cooking's Divine Power Liquid Drop. Now, he had 2 drops of the God of Cooking's Divine Power Liquid Drop. In the kitchen, Bufang and the Titan Crown Prince were busy cooking. The wok was tossing and frying, and flames rose to the sky. The aroma of the dishes, the smell of stinky tofu, and all kinds of other smells filled the air. Bufang placed one stinky tofu after another on the kitchen window. The Shy Crown Prince could always take the stinky tofu away at the right time and distribute it to every diner who bought it. Of course, the Crown Prince would roll up his face and plug his nose with a cloth towel. The stinky tofu was indeed ugly. Although it tasted delicious, everything seemed to be falling into place. However, everyone knew that this was just a facade. As all kinds of battle reports came back from outside, many people became anxious. That was because the battle report that was sent back was not good news. They were all about the fall of various great worlds. The Shy Divine Emperor was getting older. He had too many things to consider, and the scouts he had sent to the Immortal Spirit Divine Dynasty to investigate had gone missing. All these made him feel extremely uneasy. It was as if some great disaster was brewing. This feeling made him feel like he was sitting on pins and needles. 2 of the 3 divine dynasties in this chaotic universe had been destroyed, and the Soul Demon's power had grown to a very terrifying level. All of this made the Divine Emperor anxious. Fortunately, the Crown Princess of the Immortal Spirit Divine Dynasty was safe. When he sensed the Crown Princess's formidable talent, he was stunned. Did the Empress of the Immortal Spirit Divine Dynasty say that the Crown Princess was the hope of all mankind? The fact that she had comprehended 4 supreme laws of the universe was indeed unparalleled. As long as the Crown Princess grew up, mankind might be able to fight her. However, the question now was whether the soul demons would give them enough time to develop and mature. The soul demon's pace was getting faster and faster, or rather, Soul 13's pace was getting faster and faster. The Divine Emperor could feel Soul 13's unscrupulousness. He was so strong that they could not even breathe. He felt that Soul 13 was brewing a great terror. In a restaurant, Xiao Yinyu sat in a chair, looked up, and looked around. The familiar environment made her a little nostalgic. Everything was like the restaurant in her memory. Bufang's thin figure walked out of the kitchen, shaking off the water on his hands. The Titan Crown Prince followed behind him, while the Shy Crown Prince was sitting in a chair, resting. Together with Xiao Yinyu, the Crown Princess of the immortal spirit Divine Dynasty, he could not believe that all the princes and princesses of the three divine dynasties had gathered together. Chapter 1569. Wiping the water off his hands with a clean white cloth, Bufang's slender fingers were fair, straight, and well-defined. The skin on his fingers, which had just been soaked in water, looked a little tender and pale. Bufang walked out of the kitchen and looked at the three people in the restaurant. The Crown Princess and the two Crown Princes finally met in the restaurant. In fact, Xiao Yinyu was the hidden Crown Princess of the immortal spirit Divine Dynasty, so this could be considered their first meeting. The Titan Crown Prince and the Shy Crown Prince had met before, so they were quite familiar with each other. As for Xiao Yinyu, as the Crown Princess, this was the first time she met them. She was very quiet and shy, far from the fiery Shy Crown Prince and the overbearing Titan Crown Prince. Their gazes swept over Xiao Yinyu's body with great scrutiny. Xiao Yinyu wore a veil, which was the rule of the Crown Princess of the immortal spirit Divine Dynasty. The two Crown Princes' gazes were so oppressive that they made Xiao Yinyu twist her body uneasily. When Bufang came out and saw this scene, he couldn't help but twitch the corner of his mouth. The iconic geniuses of the three divine dynasties met in their own restaurant and played a game of Fight the Landlord. It was rare. After all, the three divine dynasties were millions of miles apart from each other. If it were in the past, the three of them would never have met. It was interesting that they could meet now. "All right, don't scare people," Bufang said faintly. The Shy Crown Prince and the Titan Crown Prince immediately withdrew their gazes. The Titan Crown Prince trusted Bufang more. If it weren't for Bufang, he might have been killed by the soul demons and become their food. The Shy Crown Prince had also been taught a lesson by Bufang many times, and he had long lost the courage to confront Bufang. Bufang pulled a chair and sat down. He had been working hard in the kitchen all day, so it was a good time to chat with Xiao Yinyu. In fact, Bufang had asked Xiao Xiaolong about it in the Heaven and Earth farmland. When Bufang asked him about it, the latter was naive enough to think that his sister was still in the Light Wind Empire. In reality, Xiao Yinyu had already been taken away. The main reason was that ever since he had opened up the Heaven and Earth farmland, Xiao Xiaolong's daily activity space had become the restaurant, and the farmland had changed. After chatting with Xiao Yinyu for a while, the two princes finally realized that Xiao Yinyu was actually an old acquaintance of Bufang. After chatting, Xiao Yinyu left the restaurant. She returned to the residence that the Divine Emperor had arranged for her. Meanwhile, Bufang left the restaurant and headed for the Divine Chef Temple. As soon as she entered the Divine Chef Temple, Summer appeared unpredictably. "You finally remember that you are the Lord of the Divine Chef Temple," Xia Chen's faint voice resounded. Summer had planned to leave the Divine Dynasty to search for Mu Hongzi. However, the soul demons were wreaking havoc in the chaotic universe, so she chose to stay in the Divine Dynasty. Bufang glanced at Xia Ji, the corner of his mouth twitching. He walked for a while in the Divine Chef Temple. When the surrounding Divine Chefs saw Bufang, they all bowed and greeted him. Bufang was the Lord of the Divine Chef Temple, a status that ordinary Divine Chefs did not dare to offend. With his current cooking skills, Bufang should have reached the level of a Heaven Divine Chef, and he had some prestige in the Divine Chef Temple. In the past, Bufang was just an Earth Divine Chef, and it would be difficult for him to win people's trust. But now, Bufang had already shown his cooking skills. The stinky tofu, which could restrain the soul demons, was the product of the Lord of the Divine Chef Temple's research. Now, the people of the Divine Chef Temple held their heads high when they walked on the street. The effect of stinky tofu had been verified. The experts who bought stinky tofu from Bu Fong took it and went to the front line of the great worlds to fight the soul demons. Every time they fought, they threw out a bowl of stinky tofu, which exploded and burned the soul demons into silver flames. It was very easy to deal with the soul demons. The army, which had been suppressed by the soul demons, suddenly gained a great advantage, and they were basically crushing the soul demons. The army kept winning, and the news of victory came frequently. In the Divine Chef Temple, in the place where the ancient heaven god's inheritance was sealed. 2 layers of the seal had been broken by Bu Fong, and now Bu Fong was going to continue. And now, he had the capital to continue. Summer stood on the railing and looked at Bu Fong. She was looking forward to what benefits and cooking skills Bu Fong would obtain after he completely broke the seal. The other divine chefs gathered around as well. It was a rare opportunity for them to see the Lord of the Divine Chef Temple break the seal. Bu Fong was a heaven divine chef now. Bu Fong stood in front of the seal. His divine sense surged and touched the seal. After a while, his body fused into the seal and became blurry. The surrounding people's breathing became rapid. Xiaoqian's eyes also narrowed. The further the seal went, the more dangerous it became. Many divine chefs had been completely wiped out when they tried to break the seal. She hoped that Bu Fong would not follow in their footsteps. Bu Fong narrowed his eyes. He felt a burst of heat. In the surroundings, there were surging hot currents. The ground beneath his feet was solid, and the feeling of solidity was very realistic. If Bu Fong did not remember that he was trying to break through the seal, he might have thought that he had been teleported somewhere else. In front of him was a huge circular mountain pass. In the mouth of the mountain, there was red, boiling magma. The crimson color shone on his face. Waves of heat rolled over, making Bu Fong feel a burst of heat. The test this time is at the mouth of the volcano. Bu Fong's heart stirred. Then, a boiling hot current surged up from within the volcano. As the current surged, it emitted a gurgling sound, emitting hot steam. Bu Fong's spiritual sense spread out, and columns of flame spewed out from the volcano's crater. Bu Fong's divine sense spread out and immediately poured into each of the flame columns. Could this be the test this time? Do I have to control each column? Knife skills, wok-tossing skills, and this time, fire control skills? Fire control skills were also very important for chefs. So this time, Bu Fong did not think too much. He began the test and began his performance. It has begun. Outside, the pupils of the divine chefs constricted as they cried out in alarm. Summer grabbed the railing, and the railing was crushed to pieces. Looking at the numbers that appeared on the array, which were slowly increasing, his heart was filled with excitement. Too many divine chefs had died in this seal. She did not know if Bu Fong could succeed or not. But if even Bu Fong could not do it, then no one could break this seal. Boom! Bu Fong stood at the mouth of the volcano. Columns of flames rushed up from the crater, which was boiling like a lake. Each of the flaming columns was aimed at Bu Fong. Bu Fong's divine sense, on the other hand, was controlling the cylinder to change its direction, causing it to change its direction. However, the number of columns kept increasing. 9,999 columns. The lava in the crater did not decrease. It kept surging, and one column after another soared into the sky as if they were going to pierce the clouds. Bu Fong frowned as he released his divine sense to control the columns. His aura fluctuated, and the white smoke he spewed out of his mouth evaporated in an instant. 19,999 columns. The number was still increasing, just like when he was practicing the wok-tossing skill. Bu Fong began to feel the strain. After all, his divine sense was still at the level of a demigod. 29,999 columns. 30,000, 40,000. What the F asterisk CK? As expected of his excellency palace master. This divine sense's control power is seriously too astonishing. Is His Excellency going to break the record again? The surrounding divine chefs sucked in their breaths in amazement, their faces filled with horror. Suddenly, a sense of hope rose in their hearts. Summer's breathing quickened. Her heart surged as she watched the numbers on the array change. 70,000, 80,000 beads of sweat had already appeared on Bu Fang's forehead. He focused his eyes and looked ahead. In the crater, countless columns of flames towered into the sky, almost filling the entire crater. Each column seemed to be the roar of a divine dragon, and they put tremendous pressure on Bu Fang, which made Bu Fang's expression change slightly. Drip! Beads of sweat slid across his face, down his cheeks, and finally fell to the ground. It was like a drop of water falling into a calm lake, causing ripples to spread across its surface. 90,000, Bu Fang narrowed his eyes. The pressure on him grew greater and greater. It was not only the pressure on his divine sense, but also the scorching heat of the columns. The heat seemed to have turned solid, and it made his heart tremble slightly. The whole divine chef temple was alarmed. The news that His Excellency was breaking the ancient heaven god seal spread in an instant. Countless divine chefs broke into the forbidden land. Inside and outside, they were crowded with divine chefs. Now, the pressure of the soul demons weighed on everyone's hearts. If the divine chef temple's heaven god seal was broken, they would be able to obtain the treasures passed down by the heaven god. It would certainly increase their momentum by a lot. There were only 5 heaven gods in the entire chaotic universe. But now, the soul demons had almost occupied half of the chaotic universe, and yet the heaven gods were still nowhere to be seen. Many people were disappointed with the modern heaven gods. Of course, it was not up to them to judge the heaven gods. Although they were disappointed, they did not show it. The news that Bu Fang was breaking the heaven god seal even alarmed the Xiai divine emperor. The ancient heaven god's relic had been emptied. Now, perhaps the only thing left behind by the ancient heaven god was the divine chef temple's heaven god seal. Of course, Bu Fang did not know what had happened. Bu Fang was still working hard to break the seal. The further he went, the greater the pressure became. 99,990. Bu Fang looked as if he had just been fished out of a pool. He was soaked, and his sweat was quickly evaporated by the scorching heat. So, Bu Fang's body seemed to be surrounded by a mist. There were 9 more. However, the last one was extremely difficult. Bu Fang's divine sense seemed to be pushing a mountain that weighed tens of millions of tons. It was so heavy that it made Bu Fang's soul creak. It was such a difficult seal. If there was nothing good in it, Bu Fang would never do such a tiring thing again. Rumble. Bu Fang's eyes turned red. The crater in front of him seemed to be on the verge of bursting. Finally, the last column of fire rose. The whole sky burst into a dazzling light. Everyone sucked in their breaths. They watched as the number on the light screen jumped to 99,999. Their hearts skipped a beat. It was a breakthrough. It was a success. This layer of seal had finally been broken. At this moment, the whole divine chef temple fell silent. The Xiaoi divine emperor stood at Summer's side with his hands clasped behind his back, his eyes shining brightly. Mu Hongzhi found the ancient heaven god's relic, but it was broken by someone he fancied. Could this be the legendary Karma? The divine emperor opened his mouth and murmured. He felt a little nostalgic about Mu Hongzhi. He was an extraordinary man who had stirred up a storm in the Xiai divine dynasty. But in the end, he disappeared like a bubble without a trace or a sound. Bu Fang was different from Mu Hongzhi. Bu Fang was serious, while Mu Hongzhi was coquettish. However, the divine emperor saw Mu Hongzhi's shadow in Bu Fang. Was it an illusion? Rumble. Finally, Bu Fang's figure slowly emerged. The inheritance seal shattered, revealing Bu Fang's figure, which was drenched in sweat. The divine power he had just comprehended was surging in Bu Fang's mind. But that was not what shocked Bu Fang the most. What shocked Bu Fang the most was the thing sealed in the innermost part. After breaking the third seal, Bu Fang finally saw what was inside the inheritance seal. It was the inheritance left by the ancient heaven god to his descendants. It was a colorful fruit, a fruit that Bufong was very familiar with. Oh, that's the fruit of law. Bufong wiped the sweat from his forehead, and a strange look came over his face. Chapter 1570. Bufong looked at the fruit, which emitted a colorful glow. It was a fruit of law, and it was surrounded by the mysterious aura of the law. It never occurred to him that the thing sealed in the ancient heaven god seal was actually a fruit of law. It was a fruit that could help people comprehend the laws. The colorful glow spread, swirling with a strange light and emitting an extremely bright light. The surrounding divine chefs were all stunned. Suddenly, they all sucked in a cold breath. That's a fruit of law. It seems to be, and it's not an ordinary fruit of law. A 7-colored fruit of law. It's a legendary treasure. I heard that eating it can help people comprehend the supreme laws of the universe. The surrounding divine chefs were talking among themselves. Their breathing became rapid. No one thought that the heaven god's inheritance would be this kind of thing. I heard that the fruit of law is something that can only be found by luck. There are records in ancient books that the 7-colored fruit of law is born in the chaotic sea of laws. There's also a saying that it's transformed from the essence of a heaven god's life after his death. So, it's very precious. The 7-colored fruit of law can not only help people comprehend the supreme laws, but can also enhance their talents. It's a divine medicine for demigods who are laying the foundation. The divine chefs stared at the 7-colored fruit in the seal with greed and envy on their faces. However, although the fruit was exposed, it was still wrapped in a seal. Ordinary people could only look at it. Suddenly, the breathing of the divine emperor on the high platform suddenly quickened. The wrinkles on his old face kept twitching. A 7-colored fruit of law, a fruit that can help people comprehend the supreme laws. The divine emperor's voice seemed a little hoarse. He glanced at the colorful fruit of law, then at Bufong, and his eyes burst into a dazzling light. Mr. Bu has comprehended 4 supreme laws of the universe. If he gets this fruit of law and eats it, he may comprehend the last supreme law. Is Mr. Bu going to create unprecedented history? Is he going to comprehend 5 supreme laws of the universe in the demigod realm? Even the divine emperor himself was shocked when he thought of this. The idea was too scary. For an ordinary person, comprehending 1 supreme law was enough to be called a genius. But Bufong had the chance to comprehend 5 Daos. Xiaochen also thought of this scene. His eyes narrowed, and he was so shocked that he didn't know what to say. When a miracle was about to happen in front of them, their hearts were filled with complicated emotions that were difficult to express. Bufong touched his chin and took a few steps back. Looking at the fruit of law floating in the seal, his eyes narrowed. His heart palpitated with eagerness. Once he gathered the 5th supreme law of the universe, Bufong did not know how strong he would be. Perhaps he would have a chance to break through to the heavenly god realm. However, if he wanted to continue attacking the seal today, he probably wouldn't have the chance to do so. As for the remaining seals, Bufong could sense that they were different from the rest. Therefore, even Bufong did not dare to try it. The main reason was that he was a little tired after breaking the seal. Taking out an oyster pancake, Bufong stuffed it into his mouth and took a bite. With a crackling sound, oil flowed out of the oyster pancake, filling the air with a rich fragrance. Bufong, of course, longed for the fruit of law. However, Bufong did not force it. His desire was not strong. He was the first to leave the divine chef temple. The others also left one after another. The divine emperor, on the other hand, was extremely vigilant about the last fruit of law. He had specially sent guards to guard the heaven god seal. In the divine chef temple, the news that an extremely precious 7-colored fruit of law had been found in the ancient heaven god seal spread throughout the divine dynasty's capital. No one had seen the fruit of law before, so they were very curious and amazed. As soon as the news came out, Mo, who was healing her wounds in the courtyard, became excited. She went to look for Xiao Yinyu, but found that the crown princess was not there. Without a doubt, the crown princess had gone to the restaurant to eat and drink again. She had not avenged the immortal spirit divine dynasty yet. So how could the crown princess be so lazy? So, Mo went to Bu Fang's restaurant and found Xiao Yinyu, who was happily drinking the Buddha jumps over the wall soup. Xiao Yinyu was very happy to drink this familiar delicacy. It was as if she had returned to the light wind empire. When she ate and drank in Bu Fang's restaurant, it was the happiest time of her life. Crown princess, come with Mo. Mo found Xiao Yinyu and was somewhat disappointed. The crown princess's character was too weak and shy. How could such a character carry the empress's long-cherished wish? Xiao Yinyu's mouth was still stuffed with the Buddha jumps over the wall soup. She did not expect Mo to be so anxious. She hurriedly finished the soup, narrowed her eyes, and breathed a sigh of relief. Then, she was pulled out of the restaurant by Mo and headed for the Xiai Imperial Palace. Bu Fang wiped his hands and walked out of the restaurant. He gave Mo a puzzled look as she left in a hurry, then went back to the restaurant to cook. Bu Fang handed the task of cooking stinky tofu to the Titan Crown Prince. Nowadays, stinky tofu was the best-selling dish because it had a great restraining effect on soul demons. Some people bought stinky tofu and sent it to the front line. Some bought stinky tofu and ate it themselves. They did not mind the stench and ate happily. As a result, Bu Fang's turnover kept rising. Bu Fang felt as if he was about to reach a critical point. This made him more and more excited. In the Xiai Divine Dynasty's imperial palace, the Xiai Divine Emperor clasped his hands behind his back and read the war report from the front line. Perhaps because of the stinky tofu, the Soul Demon's offensive had weakened. The two sides had reached a stalemate, and the Xiai Divine Dynasty had even recaptured many lost great worlds. Everything seemed to have become quite good. Reporting, Your Majesty, Protector Mo of the Immortal Spirit Divine Dynasty requests an audience. The sharp voice of a eunuch interrupted the Divine Emperor's mood while he was reading the report. The Divine Emperor raised his head and nodded. Then, outside the Great Hall, Mo pulled Xiao Yinyu and flew over. The Divine Emperor put away the memorial and looked at Mo and Xiao Yinyu with a smile. Protector Mo, are you used to staying in the Xiai Divine Dynasty's capital? What's the matter? Why are you so anxious to see me? The Divine Emperor sat cross-legged. Mo glanced at the Crown Princess. When she saw that her eyes were narrowed and her red lips were greasy, as if she was still savoring the taste of the Buddha jumps over the wall soup, she was a little speechless. She turned her head away. She felt that she had to seize any opportunity for her Crown Princess, because the Empress had said that the Crown Princess was the hope of all mankind. Your Majesty, I do have a request. Please speak, Protector Mo. The Divine Emperor nodded with a smile. He was polite to the people of the Immortal Spirit Divine Dynasty. After all, he also felt it was a pity that the Empress had fallen. I heard that a precious 7-colored fruit of law has appeared in the Xiai Divine Dynasty. I hope Your Majesty can give the fruit of law to the Crown Princess, Mo said. When she said these words, she also felt a little awkward. She saw the Divine Emperor frown. Your Majesty, I know this request may be a little unreasonable, but the Crown Princess is really the hope of all mankind. If the heaven gods don't show up, the human race may really be wiped out. So, Your Majesty, for the sake of the overall situation, please give the fruit of law to the Crown Princess. The Divine Emperor's face turned slightly cold. He did not expect that Mo would come to him and talk about this. The fruit of law does not belong to the imperial family, so I can't make the decision. It belongs to the Divine Chef Temple. Protector Mo should go to the Lord of the Divine Chef Temple. The Divine Emperor's face eased a lot, and he shifted the blame to Bu Fang. The Crown Princess has comprehended 4 supreme laws of the universe, and she is the hope of all mankind. Give her another fruit of law, and she will be able to comprehend a perfect law. At that time, She will definitely attract the attention of the heaven gods. Once she grows up, she will certainly become a heaven god, Amo said. Her eyes widened, and she was very confident in Xiao Yinyu. For supreme laws of the universe. The divine emperor's expression became slightly strange. Mr. Bu has also comprehended 4 supreme laws of the universe. His talent is even more exceptional. In fact, I think the hope of all mankind should be him, the divine emperor said seriously. Amo's face froze. She knew it would be like this, but she had to fight for the crown princess's chance. Yes, Bu Fong is very powerful. Xiao Yinyu nodded and agreed with the divine emperor. Imo was very angry. Her crown princess was really a little stupid. She was fighting for the crown princess's benefit, but the crown princess was pushing it away. Was she siding with an outsider? Your Majesty, if you give the fruit of law to the crown princess, I'm willing to serve the Xiai divine dynasty for 10,000 years. Imo said, gritting her teeth. A top high-grade god king serving the divine dynasty for 10,000 years was definitely a great help. Unfortunately, if you want the fruit of law, you should go to Bufang. I can't make the decision, the divine emperor said slowly. After that, he waved his hand. The eunuch flicked his horsetail whisk and said in a sharp voice, signaling the guest to leave. Reluctantly, Imo left the palace with the crown princess. Imo, Bufang is really powerful, Xiao Yinyu said, looking at the reluctant Imo. Imo turned to look at her crown princess and found that her eyes were full of confidence. It was not confidence in herself, but in Bufang. Imo sighed. My crown princess is a little stupid. What should I do? I'm waiting online for a solution. In the immortal spirit divine dynasty outside a towering and exquisite palace on the divine mountain, numerous huge shadows hovered in the air. Each of them was a powerful numbered soul demon. Their dark energy pervaded the air, turning the immortal spirit divine dynasty's capital, which was like a paradise for immortals, into a land of demons. In the palace, on a high seat, Soul 13 sat on it. His whole body was silver white, and his eyes were scarlet. The silver insect wings on his back were spread, emitting a clanging sound and bursting with sharp energy. He turned his head slightly, and his neck made a cracking sound. In front of him, on the other hand, there was a hazy, pitch-black sphere. Many figures were imprisoned within the sphere. There was the withered Lord of Phoenix, and the immortal spirit Empress, who only had her divine sense left. Phoenixes can rise from the ashes. I've killed them several times, but they're still alive. They're really strong creatures. Soul 13 propped his chin up with one hand, the corners of his mouth curling up slightly. His scarlet eyes stared at the phoenix and the ball, reflecting the phoenix's appearance. Suddenly, behind him, a black phoenix floated out, spreading its wings and letting out a sweet cry. Soul 13 opened his mouth. The phoenix swooped down, rushed into his mouth, and was absorbed by him. Wiping his mouth, Soul 13 felt that his aura had become a little stronger. Inside the black ball, the black aura kept spreading. The originally clear eyes of the dispirited phoenix gradually became blurry. Soon, they turned scarlet, and a fierce aura filled the air. The immortal spirit Empress, who was hovering in midair, looked pained. Looking at the demonized phoenix, she felt extreme pain in her heart. Tisk, I've lost a demonized dragon emperor that I've worked so hard to get, and now I have a demonized Lord of Phoenix. This is not bad. Soul 13 grinned. The next moment he rose to his feet. A terrible black aura towered into the sky, rolling and surging. The terrible pressure was so oppressive that heaven and earth seemed to be on the verge of collapse. His eyes suddenly turned scarlet. In a flash, he appeared in front of the black ball, staring at the immortal spirit Empress with his scarlet eyes. Do you know why I didn't kill you? Soul 13 said, staring at the immortal spirit Empress. The immortal spirit Empress in the black ball spat angrily. These damn disgusting soul demons. She felt a little sad. Is there no one in the chaotic universe who can stop them? Have his soul demons become so lawless? Soul 13's strength has far surpassed the Emperor level and is not much weaker than that of a heaven god. He is a nightmare for the whole universe. Why haven't the heaven gods of this chaotic universe appeared yet? Do I really have to watch the destruction of mankind? Soul 13 shook his head, then opened his mouth and breathed out a mouthful of black smoke. The next moment, the space between his eyebrows slowly split open as if it had turned into an eye. Then he stretched out a silver claw. Suddenly, the claw reached out and plunged into the black ball. The immortal spirit empress's body was instantly caught by the silver claw. An emperor-level divine sense is here to witness the moment I, Soul 13, become a soul overlord. You should feel honored. Soul 13 grinned, his voice cold. Rumble, above the imperial palace of the immortal spirit divine dynasty. The dark energy swept over and turned into a huge vortex in the sky. The breathing of the numbered soul demons outside became rapid as they looked up at the sky with great respect. It has begun. Soul 13 is going to break through to the soul overlord realm. He. The humans in this world will soon become our food. I wonder which of the 7 sins Soul 13 will become a soul overlord. At this moment, the whole chaotic universe underwent a shocking change. Everyone seemed to have a lingering fear. It was as if a stone was pressing on their chests, making it hard for them to breathe. The gods who had comprehended the supreme laws of the universe, on the other hand, found that their power of law was boiling uncontrollably. They seemed to be angry and uneasy at the same time. Chapter 1571. The changes in the entire chaotic universe made everyone a little panicked. Many people raised their heads and looked at the sky. The sky was like boiling water that was bubbling, causing everyone's hearts to subconsciously palpitate. What's that? What's going to happen? Many people asked in a panic. The Xiai Divine Emperor stood in front of the magnificent palace, looking at the changes in the sky with an expressionless face. It was a terrible feeling that made all the pores on his body tighten. He had never felt this kind of feeling before. It was not even this strong when the heaven god's tribulation descended. But he knew very well that something was about to happen. It could cause a great change in the entire chaotic universe. This could only mean one thing. That was, a heaven god was about to be born, or rather, a heaven god level expert. But was Soul 13 going to become a heaven god? The Xiai Divine Emperor's pupils constricted, and his expression was a little unfocused. A heaven god. Won't a soul demon be hindered when he becomes a heaven god? There are only 5 heaven god positions, and if a human wanted to become a heaven god, he had to squeeze out one of the old heaven gods. Therefore, it was not difficult for a human to become a heaven god. Even though he had transcended the heaven god tribulation, he was still far from the heaven god realm. The Divine Emperor had always thought that this would never happen, but he never thought that it would actually happen. Soul 13 was going to break through to the heaven god realm. He had always thought that Soul 13's strength was at its peak. The heaven gods won't let him become a heaven god so easily. The Divine Emperor's eyes relaxed. In his heart, he still believed in the heaven gods of this chaotic universe. In the Luo family's skyscraper, in the restaurant, Bu Fong was lying in a recliner, looking up at the sky that had changed color. His face was as calm as an ancient well. He was sitting on the deck of the netherworld ship, swinging her fair legs. She was also looking up at the sky, like Bu Fong. Hades Zera, on the other hand, was chatting with her girlfriends in the restaurant. Everything seemed to be going on in an orderly manner. Bu Fong took a deep breath and sat up from the recliner. He sat up from the recliner. He didn't know why, but he felt a little uneasy. He exhaled. Bu Fong narrowed his eyes, then turned around and entered the restaurant. Today's business continued. The capital of the Xiai Divine Dynasty, in a luxurious courtyard. IMO raised her head, and there seemed to be ripples in her eyes as she stared at the sky. The despair in her heart continued to spread. The soul demons are about to attack again. I wonder if the Xiai Divine Dynasty can stop them. The immortal spirit empress said that, "Your Highness is the only hope for mankind." Imo clenched her fists, and a determined look appeared in her eyes. She stood up and walked in the direction of the restaurant. She had found out that the Lord of the Divine Chef Temple was Bu Fong. In order to maximize Crown's natural talent, he had to obtain the 7-colored fruit of law. Only then would Crown be able to comprehend 5 supreme laws of the universe, become a peerless genius, and save the human race from its predicament. Regardless of whether that chef agrees or not, I must find a way to make him agree. Almo's eyes were sharp. She left the house and flew toward Bu Fong's restaurant. In the immortal spirit divine dynasty, Soul 13 stood where he was. In front of him, Lord Phoenix, who had turned into a soul demon, was shivering in the black ball. The Empress's divine sense was struggling as well, but she could not break free from Soul 13's grasp. Soul 13's eyes narrowed, as if he was thinking. Suddenly, Soul 13's eyes moved, and his hand, which was holding the Empress, slowly rose. The space between his brows cracked, revealing a slit. The Empress of the immortal spirit Empress kept struggling, but Soul 13 pressed his hand between her eyebrows and sent it into the crack. Buzz, as soon as the Empress's body entered the slit. The next moment, the aura around Soul 13 began to churn and boil. All of a sudden, it began to surge violently. The corner of his mouth twitched, and the little bit of darkness that remained on his insect scales disappeared completely. There was a flash of light. It was as if a layer of mercury had been poured over him. Soul 13 had completely turned silver. Boom! A deafening rumble rang out in the sky. A bolt of lightning as thick as an arm exploded in the sky. Then, with a rumble, it smashed down toward the imperial palace of the immortal spirit divine dynasty. Soul 13's pupils constricted. He burst out laughing. His laughter seemed to have a strange charm as it spread out and reached the ears of every soul demon. These soul demons became excited at once. They waved their fists and roared excitedly. Their insect scales spread open and spewed out streams of dark air. The scene they had been looking forward to for a long time was finally about to happen. Soul 13 was going to break through to become a soul overlord. Boom! Lightning kept falling. Soul 13's brows glowed. He spread his arms, and the insect scales on his body glowed with silver light. Bathed in the lightning, he felt very comfortable. He even felt so comfortable that he wanted to moan. This was the will of the universe of this chaotic universe. To become a soul overlord, one must alarm the will of the universe. However, Soul 13 was very confident that he would win. He was not afraid at all, even if the so-called punishment was extremely terrible. Boom! The lightning bolts fell. Each of them contained terrifying power, comparable to a full-force blow from a high-grade god king. However, when these attacks fell on Soul 13, they did not cause him the slightest damage. The defense of the silver insect scales was too strong. He closed his scarlet eyes and began to comprehend the most profound mystery. It was not so easy to become a soul overlord. It was just like how there was a limit to the number of heaven gods in this chaotic universe. There is also a limit to the number of soul overlords. Moreover, to become a soul overlord, one needed the sin mandate blessed by the soul god. If he wanted to become a soul overlord, he must have the sin mandate. Only in this way could he rightfully become a soul overlord. If he were in the chaotic universe where the soul demons came from, it might be difficult for him to succeed. However, the sin mandate, one of the 7 sins in this chaotic universe, had never been occupied by a soul demon. Therefore, it was very easy for him to become a soul overlord. Boom! The power of the lightning bolts grew stronger and stronger. Soul 13 had been very vigilant. Ever since he learned that there were heaven gods in this world who were not weaker than soul overlords, he had been very wretched. Except for that time when he attacked that stinky chef, he had been growing wretchedly. He tried his best not to attract the attention of those heaven gods. Although heaven gods had never appeared before, it did not stop him from being afraid of them. If he wanted to become a soul overlord, he needed to know how to follow his heart. Sizzle! The entire imperial palace of the immortal spirit divine dynasty seemed to be turning into a sea of lightning. In the sea of lightning, Soul 13 felt that his strength was constantly increasing. Compared to before, he was much stronger. It was a change in the constitution of a soul demon. His soul demon had merged perfectly with his fleshly body. Rumble, the lightning disappeared. All the soul demons in the surroundings stared at him with fanaticism. Soul 13 spread his silver wings. The moment they spread, they seemed to envelop the whole universe. Soul 13's eyes turned scarlet. His will spread out. Buzz, he murmured something under his breath, his tone respectful and his language profound. As he recited, a pious aura emanated from his body. Then the surrounding soul demons knelt on the ground. They watched respectfully as Soul 13's body changed. One after another, black energy balls emerged around Soul 13. The black energy ball represented the power of the origin. This kind of power seemed to be extracted from the universe itself. It did not belong to this world, but it was subservient to it. Soul 13 opened his eyes, grinned, and looked at the 7 balls of black energy hovering around him. How he wished he could devour all of them. Unfortunately, he could not do it. They were the power of the 7 sins, and he could only absorb one of them. Moreover, he could only become a soul overlord with this one. He could not touch the rest. The sin of greed was something he could not bear. Soul 13 did not hesitate for long. He raised his hand and stretched it out suddenly. Buzz, his hand grabbed a ball of black energy. The energy swirled, slowly dissipated, and immediately poured into Soul 13's body. Then it burrowed into every pore in his body. And then a vertical eye gradually took shape between Soul 13's eyebrows. The vertical eye swiveled, and a majestic sin seemed to burst out of it. The 7 sins are arrogance, jealousy, rage, sloth, greed, gluttony, and lust. Each of them can lead to the position of soul overlord. And Soul 13's eyes widened. The next moment, his mouth began to change at a speed visible to the naked eye. It slowly grew larger, and his mouth seemed to have turned into a bottomless pit. A terrible sense of hunger swallowed him in an instant. Soul 13 will become a soul overlord of gluttony. Rumble. The sky changed colors. The restaurant was closed for the day. Looking at the growing turnover, Bu Fong did not relax at all. An inexplicable worry lingered in his heart. He furrowed his brows. Bu Fong breathed a sigh of relief. He took a step, clasped his hands behind his back, and left the restaurant. This time, he quietly went to the place where the ancient heaven god had sealed the soul demon. Heaven gods were the supreme experts of this chaotic universe. Logically speaking, with the soul demons wreaking havoc like this, it was impossible for them not to appear. Did they not care about the lives of the living beings in the chaotic universe? With the strength of a heaven god, the appearance of any one of them was enough to wipe out the soul demon disaster. But no heaven god had appeared. Bu Fong was just a chef, but everyone was responsible for the rise and fall of the world. As a chef, it was necessary for him to care about the world's affairs. He looked at the fruit of law in the heaven god's seal. Bu Fong's pupils constricted in an instant. He felt that something was unusual. Are the heaven gods restrained from making a move? Or are they deliberately not making a move? Restrained from making a move? Bu Fong twitched the corner of his mouth. When the heaven god slapped him, he was very pleased with the slap. Why is that? Frowning, Bu Fong took a step forward and stepped into the seal. Rumble, the seal swirled. In the great netherworld, a towering tree with swaying branches towered into the clouds and looked as if it could strike the stars hung in the sky. On the branch, there was a figure sitting upright. The figure sat on it, swinging his legs as he stared into the depths of the chaos verse. Slurp. Murky yellow wine was poured into a cup. The man, who was as beautiful as a woman, slowly poured the wine into his mouth. TSK, tisk, good wine. Mu Hongzi toyed with the wine jar in his hand. The wine and the jar collided with each other and made a clattering sound. He took a deep breath and exhaled a breath that reeked of alcohol. It looks like it's about to begin. I wonder if that boy, Bufong, can survive this calamity. There's nothing he can do if he can't. At the very least, it'll be another reincarnation. Mu Hongzhi smiled. His beautiful face bloomed like a flower, dimming the starry sky a little. Don't you think so? Many treasures? Mu Hongzhi said. The heaven tree beneath him swayed gently, as if it was responding to him. Its leaves rustled and rubbed against each other. Chapter 1572. In the capital of the Xiai divine dynasty, heaven and earth had returned to normal. However, a formless oppressive might enveloped everyone's hearts. The divine emperor stayed in the palace, feeling a little restless. From time to time, he flipped through the memorials, stood up, and paced back and forth in the palace. As the ruler of a dynasty, he was under tremendous pressure. Outside, it was late at night, and a bright moon hung in the sky. However, the bright moon, which usually looked like a golden jade plate, was now covered with a layer of blood, which looked very strange. The divine emperor sighed. He changed into a set of ordinary clothes, stepped out, and flew out of the palace. Walking in the void and looking down from above, the capital of the divine dynasty was brightly lit and prosperous. However, no one knew how long this prosperity would last. Towering skyscrapers rose from the ground, filling the capital with an oppressive shock. The divine emperor drifted over and landed in front of the Luo family's skyscraper. He wanted to go to Bufong's restaurant and eat something delicious. When people were under great pressure, perhaps only eating was the best way to ease their anxiety. However, the divine emperor had forgotten that Bufong's restaurant was not open at night. So, looking at the closed door, the divine emperor felt more and more depressed. He just wanted to eat something. He took a deep breath and knocked on the restaurant's door. However, it was not Bufong who came to open the door. Bufong was not here, and the divine emperor had no desire to eat. Under Yu's suspicious gaze, the divine emperor put his hands behind his back and walked away. His back was hunched, and he seemed to have aged a lot. If Bufong is not in the restaurant, where could he be? The divine emperor's mind flickered. Suddenly, his eyes narrowed. As a god emperor, the power of his divine sense was extremely strong. A thought flashed through Zhang Xin's mind. The divine emperor looked in the direction of the divine chef temple. The fluctuation coming from the air there was somewhat different. Oh! The wrinkles on the divine emperor's face seemed to move. He took a step forward toward the void and disappeared in a flash. In the divine chef temple, the void was torn apart, and the divine emperor walked out of it. Below, it was the forbidden land of the ancient heaven gods. That strange fluctuation was coming from here. Could it be that someone was trying to break into the ancient heaven god's seal in the middle of the night? Ever since Bufong broke the third seal, Summer had ordered that divine chefs were not allowed to continue breaking the seal. Could it be that someone dared to disobey Summer's orders? In the divine chef temple, Summer's orders were still useful. The divine emperor put his hands behind his back. He was a little curious. Suddenly, his gaze froze. Looking down, Zhang Xin's breathing halted. That was because he discovered that one of the two remaining layers of the inheritance seal had actually been broken by someone. Buzz, no one knew when Summer would appear. She gave the divine emperor a strange look. He was busy every day, and yet he came to the divine chef temple in the middle of the night. Shoo! When the divine emperor saw Summer, he suppressed the surprise in his heart and raised his index finger at her. Xia Chan was stunned for a moment, then turned his head to look at the sealed area, his heart also becoming excited. In the whole divine dynasty, perhaps only Bufong could break the seal. Could it be that Bufong intended to completely break the seal? Bufong's face was indifferent. In front of him, a dish slowly floated up, flashing brilliantly. To break the remaining two seals, he needed to use the divine power he had comprehended in the previous seals, combining them with cooking skills. It was very difficult, and it took Bufong a lot of time to break it. However, compared to the previous tests, the remaining two seals weren't that difficult for him. It was not only because Bu Fang's divine sense was stronger. It was also because Bu Fang's cooking skills were very strong, so cooking was easier than those torturous tests. He gently raised his hand and pushed. A crack rang out. The membrane-like seal was broken. But a gust of wind blew over and swept across the whole place. The wind stirred Bu Fang's hair, causing it to flutter in the wind. A rich, fruity aroma wafted over and lingered in Bu Fang's mouth and nose, making Bu Fang's eyes narrow. It smells so good, that gave Bu Fang pause. I can't believe the aroma of this fruit of law is so strong. Bu Fang was a little surprised. He walked up to the 7-colored fruit of law, reached out a hand, and grabbed it. But a strange fluctuation spread through Bu Fang's body in an instant. It was as if someone was spying on him. Oh! Holding the fruit in his hand, Bu Fang glanced around in confusion. He was sure that he had felt someone was watching him just now. However, he could no longer feel that feeling now. Bu Fang looked down at the fruit and found that it seemed to be full of temptation. Swish! A noise rang out. Summer and the Divine Emperor landed at the same time and appeared at his side. They glanced at the interior of the seal. This ancient heaven god seal had been in the Divine Chef Temple for a long time. They had been curious about what was inside. Apart from the fruit of law, the interior was not narrow. The space was spacious, but there were many things on display, including a lot of books and some strange things. Summer's curiosity had long been aroused, and she was moving around in it, touching things here and there. The Divine Emperor, on the other hand, was very steady. With just a glance, he knew what was going on. The most precious thing in the whole space was the fruit of law. The Divine Emperor also understood that it could cultivate the talents of the younger generation, so it was naturally very important. Bu Fang did not feel the feeling of being watched, so he did not mind. Holding the fruit, he looked at the Divine Emperor and Summer. I didn't expect you to break the seal without a sound. The Divine Emperor sighed with emotion. Looking at the fruit in Bu Fang's hand, he was a little envious. Unfortunately, he was too old, and it would be a waste if he gave it to him. Bu Fang chatted with Summer and the Divine Emperor for a while. As for the other things in the seal, Bu Fang had no intention of taking them away. Except for the fruit of law, these things were useless to him. Summer and the Divine Emperor accepted them without hesitation. The three of them packed up everything and were about to leave. The three of them soared into the sky and walked across the void. Bu Fang planned to return to the restaurant, swallow the fruit of law, and comprehend the 5th supreme law of the universe. That way, he would have perfected all 5 supreme laws. However, just as Bu Fang soared into the sky, a figure suddenly shot up. And a terrifying aura filled the air. He actually blocked Bu Fang's path. The Divine Emperor and Summer furrowed their brows, looking at the figure blocking their way in confusion. Through the blood-colored moonlight, they saw the newcomer. It was IMO from the immortal spirit Divine Dynasty. The fruit of law. IMO pursed her lips and looked at the fruit in Bu Fang's hand. The Divine Emperor frowned slightly. He did not expect that IMO had not given up yet. The Empress said that Her Highness is the hope of mankind. I hope Your Majesty can fulfill her wish and give the fruit of law to Her Highness, IMO said, breathing rapidly as she stared at the fruit in Bu Fang's hand. Bu Fang frowned. Her Highness has comprehended 4 supreme laws of the universe and is extremely talented. Please, wait. IMO still wanted to speak. However, she was interrupted by Bu Fang, his face expressionless. IMO paused and looked at Bu Fang in confusion. You want the fruit of law? For Your Highness? Why? Bu Fang asked. Her Highness has comprehended 4 supreme laws of the universe. IMO said. Then I got the fruit of law. Why should I give it to her? And I've also comprehended 4 supreme laws of the universe, Bu Fang said. IMO frowned. But the Empress said Her Highness is the hope of mankind. Do you want to kill the hope of mankind? Bu Fang shook his head. In the distance, the Divine Emperor's expression changed as well, and there was a hint of anger in his eyes. If only Imo had a little bit of their Her Highness's tact. The Empress said, "She's the hope of all mankind." The corner of Bu Fang's mouth twitched slightly as he glanced at Imo. "I know Xiao Yinyu's character. She's not suitable to be the hope of all mankind," Bu Fang said. Imo still wanted to refute. However, Bu Fang interrupted her mercilessly. Holding the fruit of law, Bu Fang no longer gave Imo a friendly look. Suddenly, his aura exploded out. One by one, wheels of law emerged over his head. Every time one appeared, Imo felt the pressure on her increase a little. What hope of all mankind? That's just your excuse. You're just using it for your own good. Have you ever thought about what Xiao Yinyu wants? Does she care about the hope of all mankind? What are you afraid of? You should know very well that even if Xiao Yinyu comprehended 5 supreme laws, what's the use? You're just trying to increase the burden on Xiao Yinyu. You want the Xiai divine dynasty to protect her, and you, because you're afraid of facing the soul demons. Bu Fang said coldly. Every time he said it, the pressure made Imo tremble all over. Bu Fang's aura kept rising, and the 4 wheels of law burst into dazzling light. Imo froze as she watched. Bu Fang's aura was much stronger than that of the Crown Princess. Both of them had comprehended 4 supreme laws of the universe, but the difference between them was like heaven and earth. The Divine Emperor watched from a distance with a cold face and did not say anything. Imo opened her mouth. She still wanted to speak. She was a little flustered. However, Bu Fang did not give her a chance to speak. Like a heaven god, Bu Fang stood in the sky with his hands clasped behind his back, and his aura changed. Imo, a high-grade god king, was smashed down from the sky by the pressure. She sat down on the ground. She looked at Bu Fang in disbelief. Why is this demigod so fierce? Bu Fang paid no more attention to Imo. He took a step forward and tore through the sky like a meteor, flying into the distance in a flash and landing in the restaurant. The Divine Emperor looked at Imo. If it were not for the sake of the Empress, he would not have even sent the Golden Armor Guards to save them. The hope of all mankind who almost died at the hands of the soul demons, ridiculous. The real hope of all mankind should be like Bu Fang. A bowl of stinky tofu had killed countless soul demons. Bu Fang landed in the restaurant. He held the fruit of law in his hand, and a strong aroma of fruit wafted over. Bu Fang entered the restaurant and closed the door. The Divine Emperor and Summer also landed outside, their eyes fixed on him. Bu Fang was a demigod, so he still had a chance to build his foundation. Once he ate the fruit of law, he could comprehend 1 supreme law of the universe. Was Bu Fang really going to become the first person in history to comprehend 5 supreme laws? They had to wait for the birth of a miracle. Outside the Xiai divine dynasty's capital, a war was going on. It was between the soul demons and the humans. The humans and the soul demons had been confronting each other. Suddenly, a beam of silver light flew across the boundless starry sky. It was a great world that belonged to the Xiai divine dynasty. This great world was the Xiai divine dynasty's defensive line. Once it was defeated, the Xiai divine dynasty would not be able to resist the full-scale attack of the soul demons. The great world was already full of the Xiai divine dynasty's guards and experts. Suddenly, they saw a beam of light in the sky. The silver light flashed. In an instant, countless soul demons spread out in the sky. These soul demons all had greedy looks on their faces as they stared at the group of humans down below, drooling. Drip, drip. Saliva dripped down from their mouths. The pupils of a high-grade god king stationed in the great world constricted. He roared, "Enemy attack!" The whole great world seemed to come back to life in an instant. Soul 13's mouth grew much wider, and there seemed to be a boundless starry sky swirling in it. Facing the group of human experts down below, he sneered. He was so hungry. Opening his mouth wide, he sucked in a sharp breath. Rumble. A terrible hurricane broke out in an instant. At this moment, the whole great world collapsed, sending sand and stones flying everywhere. One figure after another was devoured by Soul 13 and fell into the bottomless world in his mouth. Chapter 1573. The Divine Emperor did not get the news that Bufang had comprehended the fifth supreme law of the universe. Instead, before dawn, a Divine Dynasty's expert rushed over with a panicked look on his face. The faces of the experts were filled with nervousness and anxiety. "What's wrong?" The Divine Emperor frowned and looked at him. "Your Majesty, the great world at the front line has fallen. It was broken by the soul demons. The army of soul demons is like a pack of wolves and tigers, and they are now marching toward the capital of the Xiai Divine Dynasty," the minister said in a panic. He was truly a little frightened, mainly because he hadn't reacted to the news when it came to him. With Bufang's stinky tofu, the front line had always been in an advantageous position against the soul demons. However, he did not expect that the front line would fall in less than one night. The few high-grade god kings guarding the front line had all fallen. This was not good news for the Xiai Divine Dynasty. The Divine Emperor's expression changed dramatically. He could no longer wait for Bufang to comprehend the fifth supreme law of the universe. With a serious face, he flew toward the capital with the minister. At the same time, he ordered the aristocratic families and ministers to hold a meeting. The news could not be kept a secret. All the aristocratic families and ministers in the capital learned about it. They all rushed to the palace. After a short discussion, they formed an army and rushed to the front line. The aristocratic families were in a state of panic. The soul demons suddenly became tough and suppressed the Xiai Divine Dynasty's army. What was going on? Could it have something to do with the strange phenomenon of heaven and earth? Everyone sucked in a deep breath as they felt the pressure bearing down on them. In the Luo family's skyscraper, Summer leaned against the railing on the top floor of the skyscraper, staring at the restaurant with its door closed. She had heard what the minister and the Divine Emperor had said just now, but she never thought that the situation had become so serious. She did not know if Bufang could really comprehend the fifth supreme law of the universe after eating the fruit of law. After all, she did not know if there would be a saturation of supreme laws, and if one comprehended too much, it would be impossible to continue comprehending them. But no matter what, she could only pin her hopes on Bufang now. Although he didn't understand why he was pinning his hopes on Bufang, he felt that pinning his hopes on Bufang shouldn't be wrong, because Bufang had created too many miracles so far. Although he was only a demigod. In the restaurant, Bufang pulled out a chair and sat on it. He looked at the rainbow-colored fruit in front of him. He felt that this fruit was a little strange, but no matter how strange it was, he still had to eat it. It was not easy to gather all 5 supreme laws of the universe. Waiting for the system's reward to provide fruit of law, this was a feasible method, but Bufang didn't know if the system would give him a temporary quest with a fruit of law. Even if there was, he didn't know how long he would have to wait, so he didn't want to gamble. You, Hades Era, and the others sat far away, craning their necks to look at Bufang. Little Hu narrowed his eyes, his nose twitching, and saliva dripping from his little mouth. However, it was impossible for Bufang to give the fruit of law to Little Hu. Lord Go was lying under the Path Understanding tree, snoring and not moving at all. Lord Dog seemed to have become even fatter. The meat around his body seemed to have piled up to the point that it didn't even exist. Bufang grabbed the rainbow-colored fruit of law. The familiar aura made Bufang understand that this fruit of law should be born in the chaotic sea of laws. Bufang's hand shook, and the dragon bone kitchen knife fell into his grasp. The kitchen knife gently slid across the surface of the fruit. Immediately, the skin of the fruit split open, and a thick juice flowed out of it. The juice splashed, exuding a rich aroma. Bufang took a deep breath, and the rich aroma went into his mouth and nose. It was the familiar taste of the fruit of law. He had eaten so many fruits of law that he had gotten used to this smell. Taking a deep breath, the flesh and juice of the fruit rushed into Bufang's mouth. A thick feeling enveloped Bufang's tongue. In a flash, Bufang's consciousness was pulled into a strange world. Dots of light twinkled like stars. Without a doubt, this was the Sea of Laws. Bufang came to the depths of the Sea of Laws with ease. He still had one law of time that he hadn't comprehended yet. If he could gather it, he would be able to gather all 5 supreme laws of the universe. As soon as Bufang arrived, the last ultimate law immediately turned into a ray of light that enveloped his body. It was as if it was welcoming him. Bufang didn't even move, but the ladder directly got into his body. The corner of Bufang's mouth twitched. He had come here so many times that the power of the law had become familiar with him. He had absorbed the law of time. However, Bufang didn't immediately withdraw from the Sea of Laws. Looking around, Bufang exhaled. The Sea of Laws gave him a strange and mysterious feeling. It was as if the power of the laws had been kept here. It was a strange feeling. However, Bufang didn't think too much about it. Suddenly, a white light bloomed in front of him. The next moment, he opened his eyes, and everything became clear. After comprehending the last law, Bufang didn't even have a phenomenon appear. Obviously, he had comprehended too much, so he didn't want a phenomenon to appear. Bufang had a strange look on his face. He cracked his neck, but his expression didn't change at all. Before the experts of the aristocratic families could even attack, they were routed along with the army. In the capital of the Xiai Divine Dynasty, the Divine Emperor stood in the palace. Behind him, all the officials bowed and stood with a look of shock on their faces. The sky there was rumbling. There were roars of fire constantly surging, and the sound of explosions was like rolling thunder. The people of the Divine Dynasty had been arranged to evacuate. Everyone was very serious. The situation was not optimistic. Were the soul demons about to reach the Xiai Divine Dynasty's capital? The skin on the Divine Emperor's old face was twitching. Why are the soul demons so aggressive? Is it really as I guessed? Has Soul 13 achieved the power of a heaven god? But is it so easy to break through to the heaven god level? The Divine Emperor's eyes were filled with vicissitudes. He ordered a eunuch to bring his armor. The eunuch left. Before long, several eunuchs came respectfully with the golden armor. Clad in a military uniform, the Divine Emperor clenched his fists and exuded a towering aura. What will come, will come. The sun shone down. Bufang pushed open the door of the restaurant. The atmosphere in the Divine Dynasty's capital today seemed a little different from what he had imagined. Bufang couldn't help but furrow his brows. What happened? The people lining up outside the restaurant had all disappeared. It was more or less the same to describe his current situation. Is no one eating today? Bufang exhaled. The power brought by the soul demons has become so severe. Bufang furrowed his brows. With his hands clasped behind his back, Bufang stood at the top of the Luo family skyscraper. Looking down from the top, he could see the army below. Everyone raised their heads grimly and looked up at the sky, where explosions and rumbles kept ringing out. Bufang followed his gaze. There, flames were surging. Their grim aura was so oppressive that it made it hard for people to breathe. Through the dense clouds, they could see the soul demons roaring, blotting out the sky. Bufang exhaled. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps rang out, giving Bufang pause. Are there still people coming to eat today? Over there, a figure slowly walked over. Looking at the figure, Bufang raised his brows. He was clad in golden armor and a bright red cloak. His pale hair hung loosely over his shoulders, and his wrinkled face had a faint look of seriousness. Straightening his back, he walked over, nodded at Bufang, and stepped into the restaurant. Owner Bu, are you still open today? The Divine Emperor asked. Bufang came to his senses and nodded with an expressionless face. The Crown Prince did not come to work as a waiter today, and he was not in the mood to do so. So, he had to temporarily act as a waiter. What would you like to eat? He was dressed in a long black dress. She looked elegant and beautiful, and her voice was cold. The Divine Emperor turned his head and glanced at the menu behind him. Then his eyes swept over it. There were many dishes, but he did not order them. Suddenly, The divine emperor looked at the first dish on the menu. The corner of his mouth twitched slightly. "I'll have a bowl of egg fried rice." You paused. Since the restaurant became popular, very few people had egg fried rice. Why did the divine emperor come to the restaurant at this time and order a bowl of egg fried rice? "I don't need the enhanced version. I'll have the simplest egg fried rice." The divine emperor chuckled like a simple old man. You told Bu Fong the name of the dish. Bu Fong was also stunned. Taking a deep look at the divine emperor, who was waiting at the table, Bu Fong turned and went into the kitchen. Washing the pot, beating the eggs, fetching the rice, Bu Fong did it meticulously. He heated the pot, lit the fire, added the oil, sizzle. In the kitchen, a strong aroma wafted out, filling Bu Fong's mouth and nose. This familiar smell made Bu Fong a little dazed. Egg fried rice. That was the dish that opened his cooking path. He tossed the wok, a ladle filled with egg fried rice. The egg fried rice was covered in a blue and white porcelain bowl. The egg was half cooked, and it seemed to be shredded, flowing slowly. This was Bu Fong's special egg fried rice. The strong aroma of the egg filled the air, causing Bu Fong's heart to flutter. Carrying the bowl of egg fried rice, Bu Fong walked out of the kitchen. He placed the dish in front of the divine emperor. "Thank you." The divine emperor glanced at Bu Fong and said. He did not mention anything about the soul demons, nor did he ask if Bu Fong had comprehended the fifth supreme law of the universe. He just took out a blue and white porcelain spoon, slowly scooped up the egg fried rice, and put it into his mouth. One mouthful after another, the fragrant egg fried rice entered his mouth, and the divine emperor chewed unhurriedly. The wrinkles on his wrinkled face seemed to dance. Finally, the last spoonful of egg fried rice was finished. The divine emperor breathed a sigh of relief. He stood up, took out a source stone, and paid. Then, he turned and walked down the stairs. After eating a bowl of Mr. Bu's egg fried rice, I feel my whole body is full of energy. Even a simple bowl of rice can be so delicious. I really hope more people can eat Owner Bu's food, and I hope this is not the last bowl of egg fried rice, the divine emperor sighed. Without looking back, he straightened his back, slowly walked out, and disappeared from the top floor of the Luo family skyscraper. After the divine emperor disappeared, the roars of an army rang out from down below. It was a cry of defiance to fate. In the sky, a rumbling sound echoed out. The sky was torn apart. A beam of silver light tore through everything in an instant, blooming brilliance, and fell from the sky. A terrible aura descended in an instant. The army, which had been shouting hoarsely, came to an abrupt halt. Soul 13's cold laughter lingered in the air, sending chills down everyone's spine. The gluttony demon lord was the ruler of the soul demons. Finally, he had arrived. Bu Fong slowly put away his source stone in his hand. He also sensed Soul 13's aura, and his face suddenly became very serious. However, the moment he put away the source stone, the system's serious voice rang out in Bu Fong's mind. Chapter 1574. The system's serious voice rang out in Bu Fong's head. It lingered in Bu Fong's ears in an instant, causing Bu Fong to narrow his eyes and hold his breath. Congratulations to the host for completing the turnover task. You are qualified for promotion. Do you want to promote? The system asked. At this moment, the system's voice was so pleasant to Bu Fong's ears. The turnover task was completed. The corner of Bu Fong's mouth twitched involuntarily. He felt that it was quite dramatic. He could not believe that he had made a breakthrough in his turnover task because of the source stone from the Xiai Divine Emperor's bowl of egg fried rice. Did Bu Fong look like someone who was sure of that source stone? As it turned out, he really was. Rubbing his wrist, Bu Fong thought of something. He chose yes. Buzz. The next moment, the system's voice rang out in his head again. Congratulations to the host for obtaining the promotion qualification. The promotion begins now. Rumble. Bu Fong sat quietly in the chair, his face calm and unchanging as he breathed a sigh of relief. Lying under the path understanding tree, the Lord Go narrowed his eyes and glanced at Buffon. Then, he lowered his head and went back to sleep. Yu, on the other hand, sat quietly at the side, blinking her big eyes and looking at Buffon. She could feel that Buffon's body seemed to be undergoing some kind of transformation. That kind of metamorphosis made her wary. She stood up and quietly closed the restaurant's door. Under the skyscraper, battle cries shook the sky. The shy divine emperor was clad in golden armor. His aura was magnificent, and his eyes were bursting with dazzling light. Behind him was the shy divine dynasty's army, each of whom was bursting with mighty divine power. As representatives of the shy divine dynasty, they raised their heads fearlessly and followed behind the divine emperor to face the soul demons in the sky. Rumble. The sky was changing colors. Silver light tore through the sky like a blazing sun, dazzling and blinding, causing countless people to feel a stinging pain in their eyes. The rumbling explosion was as dazzling as fireworks, blotting out the sky. The experts of the divine dynasty all took a deep breath. The army of soul demons was bearing down on them, and their terrible aura made everyone a little breathless. The calamity of the soul demons was the most terrible disaster the chaotic universe had ever encountered. Perhaps in ancient times, there had been even more terrifying disasters. However, this disaster had caused countless people to feel despair. The divine emperor knew that these soul demons were not creatures of this chaotic universe, but invaders. But the divine emperor was very unwilling to let the invaders occupy their world. So he had to rise up and fight back. Of the three divine dynasties, only the Shai divine dynasty was left. Perhaps in everyone's opinion, the quick destruction of the Titan divine dynasty and the immortal spirit divine dynasty made people think that the divine dynasties were incompetent. In fact, the Shai divine emperor knew that every person and expert of the divine dynasty had fought hard. Soul 13's whole body was silvery white, and he looked like a star that was blooming with dazzling light. The figures around him seemed to twist and distort as he hovered there in midair. It was almost as though he had detached himself from the chaos verse, an existence in the heaven god realm. When the Shai divine emperor sensed the unfathomable aura in Soul 13, his face darkened, and he felt a wave of despair. Yes, it was despair. Soul 13 had really broken through and become an existence in the heaven god realm. At that moment, the divine emperor even felt a little jealousy in his heart. Yes, why could these invaders break through so easily, while it was so difficult for them, the humans who originally lived in this chaotic universe, to break through and become heaven gods? The divine emperor was very unwilling. The most important point was the humans of this original universe were about to be wiped out by the soul demons, but the lofty heaven gods were still indifferent. Were they going to see this universe occupied by the soul demons with their own eyes? The divine emperor was unwilling, so he had to fight back. Even though his body was old and he was struggling at death's door, he still had to fight back. He and all the people in the chaotic universe would not yield to fate. Fight! The Shai divine emperor's armor burst into a dazzling golden light as he tried to fight Soul 13's aura. Soul 13 hovered in midair. His scarlet eyes narrowed slightly as he glanced at the crowd. After breaking through to the soul overlord realm, he felt that victory was in his grasp. There seemed to be explosive power in his body, and even a drop of his divine power was enough to crush the void. He was really too strong now. However, he was strong and hungry. The 7 sins were the foundation of the soul demons. In the soul demon universe, the gluttony soul overlord was a very terrifying existence. And now, he, Soul 13, had become the legendary gluttony demon lord. He wanted to eat up this chaotic universe. He wanted to enslave all the humans in this chaotic universe. Soul 13's mouth fell open. He smacked his tongue. A scarlet tongue fell down. The tongue was extremely long and narrow. Moreover, it was covered in hair-raising barbs. His eyes were filled with a cold gleam. On his forehead, there was an eyeball rolling, Suddenly, Soul 13 fixed his eyes on the humans down below and laughed coldly. Foolish humans. This soul overlord is equivalent to your heaven god. Give up resisting. You are no match for this soul overlord, he said. His eyes were strange. They were fixed in front of the divine emperor. You humans, submit to me obediently, and I can spare your lives and make sure you don't have to worry about food and clothing. Soul 13 said. His voice rang in everyone's ears like a great bell. At this moment, victory was in his grasp, but he did not want to exterminate the human race, even though he was very, very hungry. What he needed to do was to keep these humans in captivity. He did not want to repeat the situation in the Soul Demon universe. If a single human died, the Soul Demons would lose their delicious food. For the gluttony Soul Overlord, this was simply torture. Although he was gluttonous, he had to learn to restrain himself. Submit. The Divine Emperor sneered. They would not submit to any Soul Demon. Rumble. The shy Divine Emperor focused his eyes, stepped into the air, and rushed straight into the sky. He clenched his fists, and the divine power in him began to surge like waves. His aura kept rising, and the sky changed colors. Many Soul Demons narrowed their eyes, somewhat wary and fearful. At this moment, the shy Divine Emperor looked like a real, peerless expert. It was as if there was a flame burning in his eyes. The shy Divine Emperor's old face began to look younger, and his white hair swayed and turned into black hair. Divine Emperor Fist. The shy Divine Emperor roared. His aura towered into the sky. Clenching his fist, he threw it towards Soul 13 in the sky. Down below, the whole shy Divine Dynasty was boiling. This was their Divine Emperor, their spiritual pillar. The Crown Prince of Shai clenched his fists. His eyes were red, and he could feel his blood boiling. Looking at Soul 13 in the sky, he opened his mouth and let out a low growl. Soul 13's fleshly body was that of his father, the Titan Divine Emperor. This was a blood feud. The humans roared. The whole Divine Dynasty seemed to be boiling. The experts of the aristocratic families and the courtiers of the court all placed their hopes on the Divine Emperor. Standing on the top of the Luo family skyscraper, Summer looked straight at the shy Divine Emperor, who was rising into the sky step by step. She could only pray in her heart. The Divine Emperor could not fall. Once the Divine Emperor fell, the hope of mankind would truly be destroyed. Summer turned to look at the restaurant. Perhaps Bufong in the restaurant could carry the hope of mankind. However, Bufong had failed to comprehend the 5 supreme laws of the universe. He could not become a heaven god immediately, so the possibility of him fighting a heaven god level soul demon was really slim. Soul 13's eyes narrowed slightly. I can't believe this human still dares to resist. He took a deep breath. His eyes seemed to burst into 1,000 dazzling lights. The surrounding soul demons clamored, and in addition to the noise, there were also sneers and disdainful laughter. These laughter made the human experts even more furious. Fight! The shy Divine Emperor had turned into a young man, his eyes calm like an ancient well. Step by step, he rose into the sky and faced Soul 13. Divine power swirled around him. He threw out a punch. Behind him, the figure of an emperor emerged. It was the mental projection of the Divine Emperor Fist. As soon as the punch was thrown, the void exploded in an instant. The terrible pressure made many numbered soul demons in the soul demon camp suck in their breaths. The shy Divine Emperor was indeed worthy of being the oldest of the 3 Divine Emperors. His strength was indeed fearsome. This punch could probably kill a numbered soul demon. Heaven and earth are unfair. Otherwise, how could the chaotic universe allow you disgusting soul demons to run wild here? The shy Divine Emperor spat out a beam of divine light as he spoke. Every word was a gem. An uproar broke out among the soul demons. Rumble. Soul 13 was not in a hurry to attack. He hovered in midair with his arms crossed over his chest and his long tongue hanging down like a demon. Behind him, two numbered soul demons with silver-black insect scales and shrouded in black smoke rushed out. They were the top numbered soul demons among the soul demons. They faced the young divine emperor head-on. A fierce battle broke out in an instant. However, the two top numbered soul demons did not retreat, and they just clashed head-on with the divine emperor's body. The soul demons had absolute confidence in their fleshly bodies, which were comparable to divine weapons. Rumble. An earth-shattering collision exploded in the sky. The two soul demons were knocked flying backward. The speed at which they flew backward was so fast that they smashed through a tall building. The divine emperor stood in midair, his vigorous hair waving in the wind as he punched out at a steady pace, suppressing the many soul demons with his own might. You're already a half-step heaven god. Unfortunately, there are too many restrictions in this chaotic universe. You have no chance of becoming a heaven god. Soul 13 could see the divine emperor's bottleneck. The shy divine emperor was indeed a genius, but unfortunately, he was born at the wrong time. In today's era, heaven gods did not appear, but those who occupied the causality thrones of heaven gods were a terrible restriction for geniuses. The divine emperor's expression remained unchanged. The divine emperor's phantom behind him became more and more sluggish. His energy and blood were boiling, and wisps of blood-colored blood were drifting out of him. Every move and stance of his was filled with all of his strength and life force. Bam! 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 The two numbered soul demons struggled to their feet, but were knocked down again and again. In the end, even their scales were shattered, and they looked miserable. The divine emperor was so strong now that he could destroy the heavens. Soul 13 looked at the divine emperor calmly. Although the divine emperor was suppressing the numbered soul demons, he was not in a hurry. In front of him now, the numbered soul demons were no different from ants, and he could crush them with a snap of his fingers. So, he did not care. In fact, he was happy to see that happen. What he wanted to do was to wait until the humans' momentum reached its peak, to kill them in an instant, to make the humans' momentum crumble like a mountain torrent bursting its banks. Bam! The insect scales of the two numbered soul demons cracked, and they flew backward. All of a sudden, Soul 13 moved. In the distance, he slowly raised his hand. He pointed at the divine emperor. Then, he narrowed his eyes and clenched his fist. Oh! The young, shy divine emperor's eyes burst into dazzling light as he felt an extremely terrible pressure. The pressure made him let out a long howl. It was as if the potential in his body had been awakened. He actually broke free from Soul 13's restraint. This human is a little tenacious. Soul 13's eyes were cold. He did not want to show any mercy to this human. He was just an emperor-level existence. There was no need to worry. Soul 13 moved. He took a step forward. In the blink of an eye, he appeared in front of the divine emperor. A palm strike and a fist strike, both of which carried supreme mysteries. In just two moves, the icy silver insect scales broke through the divine emperor's fleshly body. The divine emperor's pupils constricted, and he coughed out a mouthful of blood. Then, he flew backward and smashed hard into the ground, which cracked in an instant. In just two moves, the shy divine emperor was defeated. The hope of mankind was crushed just like that. The officials, who were cheering noisily, stopped abruptly. They could not believe what they were seeing. They could not believe that this was the result. This soul demon had killed the divine emperor in seconds. Who else could stop him? All the humans were like ducks with their necks pinched. They could not even shout. Even if they could, their voices were hoarse. I've said, submit to me, and you can live. If you don't, you'll become my food and be eaten by me. Soul 13 said coldly. Whether the shy divine emperor burned his blood and energy or not, it did not affect him. He was a soul overlord, a heaven god level existence. How could a mere emperor stop him? God kings and god emperors were collectively known as gods. They were just gods. So how could they compare to the heavenly gods of a higher realm, the supreme heavenly gods? Soul 13 curled his long, narrow tongue. Then he slowly lifted the shy divine emperor's fleshly body. Narrowing his eyes, he glanced at the people present. His goal was to keep these humans in captivity. Only in this way could he have an inexhaustible supply of food. No one in this chaotic universe can stop me. Soul 13 burst out laughing excitedly. The humans were in complete despair. Looking at the divine emperor, who was curled up by Soul 13's tongue and could not struggle at all, they felt a deep pain in their hearts. Suddenly, a beam of light shot out of the Luo family's skyscraper. The slender beam of light rushed into the sky. Immediately, the sky changed color and turned into a huge whirlpool. Oh! Soul 13's eyes narrowed, and the eyeballs on his forehead suddenly turned red. It's that damned human chef. I've finally found his aura. Soul 13's wings spread out behind him, which were as sharp as blades. His cold voice exploded through the sky. Chapter 1575. Attention, host. The upgrade has begun. Please don't move. The system's serious voice rang out, lingering in Bufang's mind. Bufang's face was expressionless, and his heart was unmoved. He even wanted to laugh. Why couldn't he move during the upgrade? For the first time, Bufang was puzzled. He had never had so many bad habits before. Will anything bad happen if I move? Will it cause the upgrade to fail? Bufang asked the system faintly. However, the system did not want to answer Bufang. Buzz, a beam of light, immediately gathered around Bufang. Demigod was Bufang's strength before he broke through. In fact, a demigod was not a god. In other words, Bufang, who had killed countless gods, was just a mortal. The limit of the great sage was a demigod, but the great sage was just a mortal. Of course, for Bufang, it did not matter whether he was a mortal or not. Even if he was a mortal, he could still kill a god. After all, he had gathered all 5 supreme laws of the universe. The Sage Realm was divided into the Minor Sage Realm and the Great Sage Realm. However, the God Realm was divided into many levels, such as the Low Level, Medium Level, and High Level. This was a small division. The God King Realm was the highest level, and the God Emperor Realm was the highest level, just like the Demigod Realm was the highest level of the Great Sage Realm. Now that Bufang was about to break through, Bufang did not know what realm he would be in after the breakthrough. However, he was curious himself. With a thought, Bufang opened the system panel. Host, Bufang True Energy Cultivation Base. 9th Revolution Great Sage Realm, Demigod, Cooking Talent, 9 star skills. Level 2 Meteor Knife Technique, 100 out of 100. Level 2 Big Dipper Carving Technique, 100 out of 100. Level 1 Knife Technique. Overlord 13 Blades, 1313. Gourmet Formation, 5/6. Cutting Immortal Style, 3/3. Tools. Golden Dragon Bone Kitchen Knife. Tools Spirit Hibernating. Black Turtle Constellation Walk. Tools Spirit Hibernating. Vermilion Chef Robe. Tools Spirit Hibernating. White Tiger Heaven Stove. Tool Spirit Hibernating. Qilin Transmigration Ladle. God of Cooking Overall Rating. Heaven Divine Chef. Please continue to work hard. System Level. Level 4. Helps host embark on the path to becoming the God of Cooking. System Reward. None. Without a doubt, the system panel indicated that Bufang had not broken through yet. This breakthrough process would probably take a long time. After all, going from a demigod to a god was a qualitative leap. It was a transformation from a mortal to a god. This was a very important moment in Bufang's life. Bufang knew that once he became a god, he would be closer and closer to the God of Cooking. He would also be closer and closer to the realm of the God of Cooking that he had always dreamed of. However, Bufang knew very well that he could not rush it. The tool panel showed that the artifact spirits were all asleep. This made Bufang frown. Perhaps after this matter was over, he would need to find a place he was familiar with and wake up the artifact spirits, as Qilin had said. Without the artifact spirits, the God of Cooking set was not a complete set. Without the artifact spirits, Bufang knew that it was impossible for him to become the God of Cooking. The power of the God of Cooking was a path of no return, but it was also a path to perfection. There should be no mistakes on this path. There should be no room for mistakes. After all, there was only one chance. Rumble. Bufong suddenly felt that his body was a little hot, and his eyes lit up. Buzz, his aura began to erupt, blooming like a blazing sun. Brilliant light erupted from the top of his head and rushed into the sky. In the blink of an eye, it rushed into the sky, turning it into a huge energy vortex. At this moment, Bufong's body began to transform. Rumble. Soul 13's eyes were fixed on Bufong's position. Bufong was standing on the top floor of the Luo family skyscraper. At this moment, Bufong's aura was very obvious. Soul 13 could clearly sense the fluctuation of this aura. His tongue rolled back and wrapped around the Divine Emperor's body. The sharp barbs cut the Divine Emperor's flesh and made him bleed. However, the Divine Emperor only frowned slightly. When he saw that Soul 13 had locked on to Bufong's position, his expression flickered. On the top floor of the Luo family skyscraper, Soul 13's face turned very unsightly. Bufong is breaking through now. Once Bufong breaks through and becomes a god, he will definitely have the potential to become a heaven god in the future. I can't let Bufong fall here. The shy Divine Emperor's eyes were red. At this moment, he was burning like a fireball. He pushed his divine sense to the extreme. Blazing flames surged in all directions. Soul 13 felt a stabbing pain in his tongue, and he immediately jerked his tongue back. Damn it, Rumble. After breaking free from Soul 13's restraint, the Divine Emperor immediately shone like a blazing sun. Soul 13, on the other hand, was glowing with a silver light. Your opponent is me. At this moment, the shy Divine Emperor looked like a heaven god, and his whole body seemed to be about to transform into energy. His skin was fair and fluttering, and he looked like an immortal descending to the mortal world. His long black hair was bold and vigorous, and it actually fluttered in the air. The golden armor on his body made him look even more like a real god. Who do you think you are? Do you think you're worthy to be my opponent? Soul 13 narrowed his eyes. He was too lazy to pay attention to the shy Divine Emperor. 2 deity emperors had already died in his hands. One more and one less would not make a difference. At this moment, the one he wanted to kill was Bufong. Or rather, the one he wanted to devour was Bufong. Bufong's innate talent made his hair stand on end. If he devoured this kind of human genius, his strength would skyrocket again. After all, he had just become a soul overlord, and his strength was still a little superficial. If he encountered the soul overlords of the soul demon universe, he might be killed in an instant. However, if he devoured Bufong, he could strengthen his foundation and give him the strength to fight against veteran soul overlords. So, he could not care less about the Divine Emperor. Not to mention, in addition to Bufong, there was also the aura of the cursed goddess in the restaurant. Once he, the gluttony soul overlord, devoured these 2 fellows, he was certain that he could even stabilize his body among the soul overlords. Swoosh! The wings on Soul 13's back flashed. They seemed to cut through the void and burst out. He opened his mouth, and the dark space in it that looked like a boundless universe began to spin. He was very hungry, so he planned to eat the whole skyscraper. Rumble. Soul 13 flew past the shy Divine Emperor in a flash. He could not believe that the Divine Emperor was ignored. The shy Divine Emperor's body seemed to be evaporating at any moment. In less than 1/100th of a breath in, he stood in front of Soul 13. Without hesitation, he threw out the Divine Emperor fist. How dare you stop me? You've overestimated yourself. Soul 13 growled. His scarlet eyes flashed in an instant. Boom! His silver body rolled over like a steel chariot. The shy Divine Emperor's body was almost blown apart in an instant. Puff! He coughed up a mouthful of blood. His aura was weak. However, his eyes were still firm as he stared at Soul 13. You're courting death. I'll fulfill your wish. Soul 13's eyes were cold. He raised his paw. Then, he grabbed the shy Divine Emperor's head. With a swoosh, He crashed toward the Luo family skyscraper. The soul demons roared excitedly. The humans, on the other hand, were completely silent. They could not believe that their spiritual pillar, His Majesty, was crushed by that soul demon like a dead dog. Was the gap between them really so big? Where was the heaven god? Where was he? Some of the humans began to riot. Boom! Soul 13 grabbed Xia Yua's head and fiercely pressed him against the door of the restaurant. With a loud bang, the wooden door of the restaurant shook and creaked. Summer, who was upstairs, felt a chill in her heart as she watched the scene up close. She looked at Xia Yuha, who was covered in blood under Soul 13's paw, and suddenly felt a stabbing pain in her heart. Perhaps she began to understand Xia Yua's persistence. It was because he was the divine emperor of the divine dynasty. In the face of disaster, if the divine emperor did not bear it, who else could? You really don't know what's good for you. But don't worry, I won't kill you. I'm going to keep you in captivity. You know the story of killing the chicken to get the eggs, right? This story tells us that if we want more eggs, we should raise the chicken well. The corners of Soul 13's mouth twitched. The shy divine emperor fixed his eyes on Soul 13 through the paw and stared at his face. Buzz! Suddenly, a waterfall of divine power smashed toward him. Bam! It smashed Soul 13's silver insect scales. However, the force was too weak, so weak that it did not even leave a scratch on Soul 13's insect scales. Oh! However, this small waterfall also attracted Soul 13's attention. Narrowing his scarlet eyes, he turned his head and looked in the direction of the waterfall. There, Summer's eyes were fixed on Soul 13. A mid-grade god king, Soul 13 froze for a moment. Then the corners of his mouth twitched and he sneered. His sneer made Summer's face flush with anger. Does this guy have to laugh so exaggeratedly? Doesn't a mid-grade god king need respect? Scram! Soul 13's laughter stopped abruptly. Then, the vertical eye on his forehead suddenly emitted a burst of light. Buzz, a scarlet beam of light shot out of it. It sped towards Summer like a bolt of lightning. The light beam that almost suffocated Summer made her feel as if she had fallen into an ice cave. Under the light beam, she did not even have the strength to lift her leg to dodge. No wonder Xia Yuha was beaten so miserably. This soul demon has really become a great demon. Is this the legendary Heaven God realm? Even Bu Fong, who had comprehended 4 supreme laws of the universe, would have to exhaust all his trump cards in the face of a Heaven God's attack. Not to mention Summer at this moment. In front of this beam of light, she was as weak as a moth flying into a flame. In the next second, she was about to turn into ashes. Summer could already feel the aura of death. The aura of death made her face pale and bloodless. After shooting out the beam of light, Soul 13 was too lazy to pay attention to Summer. In his opinion, this evil woman was going to die. So, he fixed his eyes on the restaurant. The chef was in the restaurant. Does he want to break through to the god realm? So what if I let him become a god? It's just a little more delicious. Xia Yuha's pupils constricted to the size of sesame seeds. He watched as the beam of light approached Summer. Summer was his sister and his only family now. He did not want to see her die like this. However, he was powerless. Suddenly, Xia Yuha froze. Soul 13 froze as well. A melodious voice rang out. In this solemn atmosphere, it seemed a little comical. Summer has passed quietly, leaving behind a little secret. I can't tell you, Soul 13's scarlet eyes changed. His sharp eyes turned round as he looked at Zhang Xian in confusion. Who the F***CK played this song? His eyes were tightly closed in the Summer, and his entire body was trembling and trembling. She could not move at all. However, when the scarlet beam of light approached her body, it did not kill her. Instead, a blurry figure appeared in front of her. It was a hazy figure. It was graceful and beautiful like a woman. Summer froze for a moment, then looked down at the necklace around her swan-like neck. At this moment, the necklace was broken. It was given to her by Mu Hongzi. If you have what it takes, go to the restaurant and bully that chef. What's so great about bullying a woman? Bah, 7 major crimes? More like 7 major crimes. My little Summer is so cute, and you dare to lay your hands on her? If you have what it takes, come and find me. I'll fight you for 300 rounds. If I'm a coward, I won't be called. Mu Tsongxin, the peerless figure of light, who looked like a banished immortal, opened his mouth and let out a roar. His roar made everyone dumbfounded. Soul 13's scarlet eyes widened. He opened his mouth, but could not say a word. What the F***CK is this? The corner of Xiaoyu's mouth twitched as Soul 13 pressed against the door. Who is Mu Tsongxin? Could it be Mu Hongzi? However, at this moment, he felt a warmth in his heart. It turned out that Mu Hongzi had set up a protection on Summer. If it were not for this protection, she would have died. For once, the unreliable Mu Hongzi was reliable. Get lost. Soul 13's eyes returned to normal, and he growled coldly. That chattering guy annoyed him. He loosened his grip on Xiaoyu. Then, he appeared in front of Summer in a flash. With a swipe of his claw, the void cracked inch by inch, and the cracks in the void could still be seen. Mu Hongzi's chattering figure was torn to pieces in an instant. However, to everyone's surprise, Summer's body was torn to pieces as well. Oh, with the last speck of light faded away, Summer's figure had disappeared from where she was. Mu Hongzi had taken her away. Suppressing his anger, Soul 13 felt a little aggrieved. As a soul overlord, he could not believe that someone had run away after showing off. Now, he wished he could devour everything. When he was angry, he wanted to eat. Xiaoyu breathed a sigh of relief. He slumped in the doorway and twitched the corner of his mouth slightly. Mu Hongzi has taken Summer away. This made him feel much more at ease. At least, the Xiai divine dynasty would not be completely wiped out. Who the hell is Mu Hongzi? He's able to block a blow from a heaven god level existence. Did I misjudge that guy before? Soul 13 turned his eyes back to the restaurant. As for the Xiai divine emperor, who was lying like a dead dog, he did not even look at him. Saliva kept dripping from his enlarged mouth. All he wanted to do now was to eat that chef. No one could stop him. Creak! Suddenly, Soul 13 paused. The closed door of the restaurant opened. Oh! Pretending to be a ghost. Are you ready to die after opening the door? Soul 13 grinned coldly. Then, he strode toward the restaurant. With a single step, he stepped into the restaurant. All of a sudden, he stepped into the restaurant. His scarlet eyes focused, and a figure was reflected in the light. It was a chubby figure. His whole body glowed with a metallic luster. His mechanical eyes flickered as he sensed Soul 13's violent aura. The 3 flags behind him fluttered. Troublemaker will be stripped as an example to others. Chapter 1576. What's that? Soul 13's eyes narrowed as he stared at the lump of iron that had walked out of the restaurant. The bald iron lump was a good match for the silver scale armor on his body. But why does this thing have the courage to be so arrogant in front of me, and to strip as an example to others? A mere lump of iron would be crushed in an instant. The wings behind Soul 13 shrank, and he took one step at a time. The ground in the restaurant trembled and rumbled. Soul 13's scarlet eyes turned and fell on Bufong. He saw Bufong, who was sitting in a chair. The latter sat on a chair with a peculiar aura fluctuating around his body, as if he was about to rise into the void. His pupils constricted. Yes, it's this chef, this damned stinky chef. Ever since Bufong stopped him from eating the oyster pancake, he hated this chef to the bone. Although he was a gluttony soul overlord, when he thought of the taste of the oyster pancake, he still felt disgusted. So, he would kill this stinky chef no matter where he went, even if he was in the Acheron Valley. A captive? No way. This stinky chef must be slaughtered and eaten on the spot. He rolled his eyes and rested them on Bufong's side. There, you sat coldly, looking at him without the slightest emotion. Cursed goddess, stinky chef, Everything is in place. Soul 13 felt a pang of hunger in his belly, which made him even more violent. As a gluttony soul overlord, all he had to do was eat. Eat everything. First I'll eat the chef, then I'll eat the cursed goddess. Ha ha! Soul 13 laughed as if he had lost his mind. Then he trotted all the way toward Bufong. He did not think anyone could stop him. The strongest human, Xiaoyuhe, was now lying in front of the restaurant like a dead dog. Who would stop him? Under the path understanding tree, Lord Ghost slowly opened his eyes, glanced at Soul 13, and yawned. His chubby body turned over, and then he went back to sleep. Rumble. Soul 13 stomped his foot, and the whole restaurant seemed to tremble. His sharp silver claws grabbed at Bufong, trying to twist Bufong's head off. Suddenly, a fan-like palm blocked in front of him. Looking at the palm, Soul 13 was stunned. The sharp claws that could cut through anything collided with the fan-like palm. A clanging sound rang out. Soul 13 found that his claws had been blocked. This lump of metal could actually stop him. He was a spirit overlord. What the hell are you? Soul 13's eyes burst into dazzling light as he roared. Boom! He wanted to erupt with the power of darkness and completely destroy this iron puppet. However, troublemakers will be stripped as an example to others, Xiao Bai said mechanically. Then, with a clanging sound, the flag behind him descended from the sky. Soul 13 found that he could not use the power of the soul overlord that was surging like magma in his body. It was as if it had been sealed by some powerful force. For a moment, he was unable to break free. Just as he was about to break free, the iron puppet was approaching. Soul 13 opened his mouth and roared. At this moment, he was still wondering why he could not use the power of the soul overlord. It seemed a little strange. Bam! A huge fist approached and smashed into his face with a thud. Just like that, Soul 13 was forced to take a step back. Whitey's mechanical eyes flickered. It was unforgiving. His chubby figure was very agile, and in an instant he approached Soul 13. One palm after another flew towards Soul 13's head. It was as if metal was colliding with metal, causing a clanging sound to ring out. Rumbling filled the air. Soul 13 was dumbfounded. Perhaps even he did not expect that, as a spirit overlord, he would be pressed to the ground and beaten by an iron puppet in a restaurant. Xiaoyuhe, who had fallen in front of the door, also widened his eyes. Even though he was seriously injured, he had to watch with wide eyes. Was the iron puppet in Bufong's restaurant so strong? How could it suppress Soul 13, who was comparable to a heaven god? It's a clothes-stripping demon. Outside, many people were in an uproar. Many of the experts who had suffered from Xiao Bai's inhuman treatment were inexplicably excited. Since even Soul 13 was suppressed by this puppet, it was not surprising that they were stripped naked. Xiao Bai's series of attacks stunned Soul 13, and he did not even have time to react. Suddenly, his silver face froze. At some point, Xiao Bai's huge palms had grabbed his shoulders and thighs. Strip him! Xiao Bai's mechanical eyes flashed. With a wave of his hand, he was about to begin stripping Soul 13's clothes. However, Soul 13's body was covered with silver insect scales, which were the soul demon's protection. In fact, they were also a part of his skin. Xiao Bai's hand slid across them. The stripping failed. Soul 13 was naked from beginning to end. This time, it was Xiao Bai's turn to be dumbfounded. Obviously, he did not understand why he did not feel the pleasure of stripping Soul 13's clothes. What's with that slippery feeling? Even a clothes-stripping demon would fail one day. Can I disable my power? Whether it's the power of law or the power of sin. Interesting. Soul 13 looked down at Xiao Bai. Even though their postures were quite indecent, he did not care. In just a short while, he had figured out Xiao Bai's trick. This iron puppet was not strong. It relied on the power of the restriction to force people to fight with their flesh. However, as a soul overlord, he had never been afraid of a physical body. Soul 13 grinned. He raised a hand and grabbed Xiao Bai's round head. Then his eyes lit up. His head slammed into Xiao Bai's. Bam! A clanging sound rang out, and sparks flew in all directions. Whitey staggered a few steps back from the impact. His mechanical eyes flickered. A physical body, Soul 13, kept sneering. He thought this iron puppet was a hidden heaven god, which scared him so much that his heart constricted. He knew that he, who had just become a soul overlord, was no match for the veteran heaven gods of this chaotic universe. But now he was sure. This iron puppet was actually a little strange. After all, he was a soul overlord, so he was fearless in a melee fight. His head kept falling. With the protection of the insect scales, his head was not afraid of being hit at all. Xiaoba was a little confused. The next moment, Soul 13's eyes flashed. The insect scales on his body made a cracking sound. Immediately, a waterfall of insect scales shot out and sealed Xiaobai's body. Xiaobai fell to the ground as if he was caught in a big net. His mechanical eyes flickered, and he struggled for a while, but he could not get up. He was like a turtle that had been turned over. Soul 13 grinned and played with his sharp claws. His eyes were fixed on Bufang. This time, no one is going to stop me. You focused her eyes. She did not expect Xiaobai to be defeated so quickly, but it was normal. Rumble. Her hair turned ghostly green in an instant. You slowly stood up from her seat. Ghostly green energy seeped out of her body. Although she had not fully mastered the dead woman's power, she could no longer hold back now. The pressure that Soul 13 put on her was too great. The power of a curse goddess. Unfortunately, you are not a phenomenal curse goddess. Soul 13 sneered. Nethery raised her hand, and the ghostly green curse snake emerged and coiled around her. It hissed and flicked its forked tongue, bursting out with a terrifying aura. The power of curses did not belong to the supreme laws of the universe, but its power was no weaker than that of the supreme laws. Yu's hair fluttered in the wind. Her long, fair legs moved slowly. Step by step, she walked towards Soul 13. But you said, the cursed snake flung its arm. Immediately, it opened its fangs and lunged at Soul 13. Hissing sounds rang out incessantly. Soul 13 smiled disdainfully. The power of curses was indeed terrible. If it were in the past, he would have been afraid, but now that he had become a soul overlord, what was he afraid of? He opened his mouth wide, as if there was a bottomless pit in his mouth. Gluttony's sinful energy surged. It wrapped around the cursed snake. The cursed snake struggled, but Soul 13 just laughed. A suction force erupted from his mouth and swallowed the cursed snake into his belly. He swallowed a whole. Yu's expression immediately changed. The cursed snake was eaten? You stay here too, Soul 13 said coldly. His body flashed, and he immediately approached Yu's side. The silver insect scales on his back suddenly expanded. Poochie Poochie. The insect scales seemed to have turned into a steel cage, locking you inside. I'll kill that chef first, and then I'll eat you slowly. A curse goddess is hard to come by. Soul 13's saliva dripped from his mouth as he swallowed, his eyes bursting with a ferocious light. His eyes were locked on Bufang. At this moment, Bufang was immersed in a strange feeling. It was as if his divine sense had drifted up along the beam of light and rushed into the boundless starry sky. In the starry sky, every star exuded the power of a law and was attracting him, trying to resonate with the power in him. However, he had the power of 5 laws, so if he wanted to resonate with them, he would need a god with the power of the 5 supreme laws to do so. When the stars sensed his aura, they trembled with fear and chose to give up on resonating with him. For a moment, Bufang was like a wandering child, drifting in the boundless starry sky. At this moment, Bufang felt as if he had returned to the sea of laws. The starry sky was constantly changing. The universe seemed to be changing as well. Everything was rotating, filled with a strange aura. He reached out a hand, trying to grab the wisp of resonance. However, he caught nothing time and time again, causing him to feel rather annoyed. Suddenly, Bufang sensed an aura. This aura is somewhat familiar. It was the aura of a heaven god. Although he did not know if it was the same heaven god who had injured him, Bufang still narrowed his eyes. The heaven god's aura had sensed Bufang. After circulating around Bufang's body for a while, it did not choose to guide him. Then, one heaven god's aura after another appeared. However, none of them guided him. This was a little awkward. Bufang frowned. Without guidance, he could not break through to the god realm. Could it be that he really could not become a god? These heaven gods must be doing this on purpose. No, it's not on purpose. Bufang's heart skipped a beat. He had comprehended 5 supreme laws of the universe. It was not that these heaven gods did not guide him on purpose, but they did not dare to. They did not dare to guide him. Bufang heaved a sigh of relief inwardly. His will gradually drifted away, rising higher and higher. Since no heaven god dared to guide him, he would tear a hole himself. Bufang was determined to become a god. Rumble, the aura on his body began to surge. It grew brighter and brighter. The 5 laws turned into 5 wheels, wheeling around him. Bufang's heart skipped a beat. Then, 5 gourmet arrays emerged. The gourmet arrays superimposed, pushing Bufang's body up in the air. It was as if he was illuminating the heavens. Rumble. In the restaurant, Soul 13's mouth was dripping with saliva as he approached Bufang. His whole body was trembling. However, just as he was about to reach Bufang, the light beams around Bufang began to recede rapidly. Oh! The scene not only stunned Soul 13, but also all the humans, including the shy divine emperor, were stunned. Without the guidance of a god, could it be that Bufang had failed to break through? He had failed to comprehend 5 supreme laws, and now he had failed to break through. Could the disaster of mankind really not be avoided? Bufang, who was known as the hope of mankind, had completely failed. When Soul 13 came to his senses, he could not help but burst out laughing. He was laughing heartily. I didn't expect this chef to have such a day. All of this is retribution. Even the god of mankind doesn't want to guide you. In that case, let me eat you. Soul 13 burst out laughing. His mouth opened wide, and then opened wide. Finally, it seemed to turn into a huge black hole that was about to swallow Bufang whole. Under the path understanding tree, Lord Dog, who was lying on it, furrowed his brows and slowly opened his eyes. The fats on his body were trembling. He gave Bufang a puzzled look and stuck out his tongue. Then a dog paw slowly stretched out from under his chubby fat. However, just as Lord Go was about to strike, his movements froze. The corners of his mouth twitched, and the dog paw that had stretched out retracted. Bufang, who had retracted his aura, slowly opened his eyes. With an expressionless face, he glanced at Soul 13, who had opened his mouth wide and was laughing while trying to bite him. Anorexia? Cured? How dare you open your mouth in front of me now? Bufang said lightly. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.